Hi, everybody. Welcome to the program. This is your August 1 warning. Look out. This is the Jeff Gerstmann Show. I am hosting this week's installment of the show. My name is Jeff Gerstmann. And thanks for tuning in. Hi, welcome. We're here. There are some video games of recent note worth discussing. And perhaps also some news from the world of video games to talk about as well. And of course, your emails later on. And I've got a drink here. I've got a, I've been living the high life, drinking energy drinks that I want to drink instead of the energy drinks that I need to drink to fill out this list. And so, I was at the store the other day and I saw one that I was pretty sure I hadn't tried before. That's been the thing more often than not, as I see a drink go, I'm pretty sure that's not on the list yet. And most of the time I'm right. Sometimes I buy it and go like, oh no, I totally did drink this. I remember this now. But yeah, a full packed show. It's my birthday today. I don't, so thanks everybody for watching and listening and all that other stuff. I don't know what those two things have to do with each other. You can go to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann, get yourself a ad-free version of the podcast, as well as some bonus shows. I spent some time yesterday putting together some of the first notes for the next episode of Game Boys to Men, so we'll that'll be coming your way in maybe another week or so here. Yeah. I don't know. It's there's been a couple of things lately that, birthdays, it's not really something I pay super close attention to. if that makes any sense. I don't know, like past a certain point. And for me, that certain point, I think, was in my late 20s. It was just like, man, whatever. And so, yeah, I don't know. The whole birthday thing, it's cool. It's one of those things where it's one of those cool surprises that you don't necessarily expect from having kids, is that your kids will get excited about your birthday because, your spouse will rev them up for it. And, so my daughter ran in and they sang happy birthday, and they went off to, I don't know. They went out for the day. It's less hot today than it has been for the last week or two. But on their way out, it was fun. It was fun. Like, hey, this is cool. But yeah, the actual, like, what am I gonna, my wife was like, what do you want for your birthday? I'm like, fucking nothing. I don't know. I'm like, what, I don't know. I just bought a new router. Like, I don't need, what are socks? I actually do need some socks. I don't ever wear them though. I need a new pair of shoes. We went to the beach over the weekend. Ever since the pandemic started, I've basically only been wearing one pair of shoes. So all the way back 2020, I had this one pair of Adidas NMDs, if you're familiar, that I just wore. They were comfortable and just a good versatile pair of shoes. I'm not showing out for anybody because where the fuck am I, especially, now I'm like working from home. Like, my wife doesn't, I don't need to break out a pair of crispy fours to show my wife, like it's fucking, who cares? And so I've just been wearing, when I need shoes, I just throw on these Adidas, but I wore them to the beach and, there was a hole in the toe because it's kind of the stretchy material, which is part of what makes them so comfy. It's like, these are shoes, but they're kind of like slippers. This is fun. And so eventually there's a hole worn through where my big toe is, which maybe that's a sign that I need to trim my toenails more often, but let's not get into that. Anyway, there's a hole in there. And so I was already thinking like, I need to get some new shoes, but then I wore them to the beach and we made sandcastles and stuff, and my daughter needed water. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go get some of that. So I, had to kind of get out there a little bit, and I'm like, oh, my shoes are completely underwater right now. That's fine. But these shoes have seen better days. So I think, you know what? I might just fucking, so I've got, I don't know, 20 or 30 pairs of shoes here. but none of them are like throw on comfortable like those NMDs are. And so I don't really want to mess around. You know, I'm not gonna like pull out some fancy pair of shoes. I got a bunch of weird shoes too. There's some I need to get rid of. There's a pair of New Balance with like digital camo on them that I bought in Japan, and they're size 12s, even though I'm a size 13, because they don't make shoes that go up to size 13 and sell them in Japan, turns out. But they were so sick looking at the time, I was like, well, I'm getting these anyway, and maybe they'll fit. No, of course they didn't fit. Dumb. And what else? I don't know. I've got a pair of size 14 PlayStation shoes that they were selling at E3 that one year, because they were out of my size, so I want to size up. And then I was like, I should just sell these. I'm not gonna even wear them, even if they did fit. They're not great. And so yeah, no, that's concerned one in the chat says you need to just give up all pretension and get Crocs. They're real comfortable. I have a pair of Adidas slides, you know, like sandals or whatever, like Velcro jobbies, that I throw on. Like, I got to take out the garbage, you know, anything like that, you know. So those are very Croc-like. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We're my daughter has the rest of this family, other than me, owns Crocs and wears them on a fairly regular basis. My daughter's got all these, like, they call them gibbets. And they're little, you know how the Crocs have holes in them where you cram stuff through the holes, and they have stuff on them. So like you can there's like official ones, and then there's a budding market for bootleg gibbets. And so I don't know. She's got all her Disney princesses in the gibbet holes and everything, and they light up when she steps, and she's super excited about it. So yeah, my son just got his first pair a little bit ago, and they're very handy for like, oh crap, these kids got to go outside right now, and I need to throw some shoes on them. They're really great for that. So you know, I'm not like morally opposed. I mean, look, we're gonna probably have to buy a minivan soon, so I'm not, you know, like I'm not like one of these. And it's funny, you can tell, you talk to people that don't have kids, and you say like, oh yeah, well, you know, we got a third kid on the way, so we're going to go get a minivan. And there's been some people in our lives that have just been like, oh no, don't give up the dream. Don't do it. Oh, like, fuck, it's a fucking car. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's also not the only car we will own, but also there are no SUVs big enough to fit what we're doing, unless you go get some gaudy Ford Explorer, some fucking nightmare like that. But like, you know, I've had this stupid Lexus NX, which is like not their full size SUV, but it is very similar in size to their full size SUV. And we've been trying to go places with that for years. Even when we only had one kid, you couldn't fit shit in that car. It's fucking trash. The Lexus NX, if you're trying to haul stuff somewhere, it's fucking garbage. Unless you can fold the seats down. But if you have a car seat, you can't fold your fucking seats down. It's a disaster of a vehicle. An absolute piece of trash. And also one of the most boring cars I've ever driven. So yeah, I don't know. We're you know, we've been talking minivan for a while, and you know, like we don't have a ton of time left before there's another person living here, and so you know, we're gonna investigate a couple of different brands of minivan, I guess. But like, yeah, I don't know. We need to bring people places, and we need to bring, you know, gear, like a big stroller or you know, bed type things, crib style things for some of those people to sleep in or whatever. So I don't know. Yeah, I've never been precious about like any of that stuff. And when people get that way, it's just nuts to me that people are, you know, like, oh, the dream is dead. You're getting a minivan. Oh no. Like, no, you know, we have a family of fucking 5. It's cool that like you're drinking yourself to sleep 4 nights a week. Alone, like that's, you know, that's a choice, good going, but that is not the life we're leading. So we need to fucking move kids places. So yeah, we've been investigating that stuff. So all that is to say, I'm not above wearing Crocs. I just, it's whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I'm probably going to end up, I'm going to end up with some kind of, some kind of probably another pair of Adidas NMDs at some point here, because those shoes have been real good to me since they came out. I can't quite find the ones that I really want because they don't make them in that, but they make a lot of NMDs that are not stretchy on the top, and I don't know what the word for that material is. So when you're looking at them, you got to look at them real close and go, is that the stretchy material or not? And whatever else, but I gotta look into that because those shoes are fucking destroyed. Now that they've already had a hole in them, all this other stuff, and now they spent significant time in the sand underwater, and I'm like, whatever. I was looking to get rid of them anyway. So yeah, I don't know. The beach was super fun. Like we made some sandcastles and wandered around. It was an incredibly good time. We went out to eat after that. That was not fun. It was very hot. It's been in the high 90s here lately. And young kids, taking them out to eat at restaurants, it's not, dicey's not the word, because we've had times where it's been wonderful. It's been absolutely splendid. The kids are fine with it and everything. And then there's other times where it's just like, this is all right. You're borderline vomiting. You're not eating. This is all right. What are we doing here? It's a whole thing. But yeah, the beach was an awesome time. Let's drink this drink here real quick. Let's find out what this is about before we get into some video games here. This is what is this? A Monster Ultra Fiesta Mango. I'm like, Fiestas are fun, but an Ultra Fiesta, man, that sounds like a good time. Mango also sounds like a good time. Though in the world of energy drinks, I will probably tell you that, you know what? I'm just going to quickly search the word mango because I don't think, okay, C4 Mango Foxtrot is our number 8 drink. Maybe I should just bring this up so you can, see the list with me here. So there have been some mango-oriented drinks that have, that's not it. That's still not it. Nope. Fuck Notion, man. Notion is a real mess of a program. It's real useful when it's useful. It's real not when it's not. Okay. It's quirky. Let's call it. It's a quirky piece of software. All right, we have 5 matches for Mango. C4 Mango Foxtrot's number 8. Grizzly Energy Orange Mango is number 13. Gatorade Fast Twitch Tropical Mango is number 39. Ghost Tropical Mango is number 45. So that's actually, Mango has done quite well for itself, which is not what I would have initially expected. I would have thought there would have been some really rotten mangoes down low on the list, but no, Mango has done quite well for itself. So, and that's, we'll see. Monster Ultra Fiesta Mango. I don't know. Fiesta to me doesn't imply a flavor, but if it was more like a little more of a tropical kind of, I don't really know. I don't really know what to expect with this. Mango. That's it. No, this Ultra Fiesta celebrates the nights that turn into mornings and the friends we now call familia. Really? That's the copy you wrote for this? Like you had to write like 2 paragraphs of copy to go on here to describe what this was, and that's like, how many meetings did they have about the copy that went on the back of the Ultra Fiesta Mango can? Zero sugar Ultra Fiesta. It is juicy mango flavor into the ultra we love. Finished off with a... All right, you're rehired, whoever wrote this. Finished off with a full load of our Monster Energy blend. De nada! And then that's what they wrote at the end. De nada! All right, it's time to drink a full load here on camera. Yes, pour La Familia. Full loads for everybody. Woo. What the fuck was going on there? It was like someone smoked a cigarette and blew it in my face, and then there was a little bit of mango. Okay, that was a weird first smell, but okay, it is settling down a little bit, but yeah, I wonder, we should, an interesting thing to do would be to get, and I guess they don't make these anymore because of the nanny state, but get like all the weird flavored, go get like a mango flavored vape and then smell this and smell that and and see if they actually smell the same. All right. That's just mango. It's fine. Like, it's good. They just didn't want to call it Ultra Mango. Was that they're like, Ultra Mango is not enough. Like, it needs to be, we got to pep this up a little bit. Ultra Fiesta Mango? Ah, perfect. Corner office for you. Oh, so Ground Flyer in the chat says it started as just Ultra Fiesta. So maybe they just maybe someone loved the name Ultra Fiesta, and then they're like, no one knows what Fiesta fucking tastes like, Bill. They're like, it tastes like a full load. Don't take this from me. And they said, no, Bill, we're going to keep it. We're just going to call it Ultra Fiesta Mango. This is okay. You could guzzle this full load of Monster Fiesta Ultra Fiesta Mango. It's just mango. I don't know. There's something about the raw, like the more mango flavor goes into an energy drink. I'm trying to like put it into words here. It's that when I smelled it and I was like, it smells like someone's smoking cigarettes. There's something dirty in this. It's like a mango that's been on the ground, rolling around for a while. It's a dirty mango. There's a hair on it. Oh, because there's a hair on my Ultra Fiesta Mango. Dirty in a good way? No, not necessarily dirty in a good way. This tastes fine. It's just a little And you know what? I might feel that way about actual mango. There's something about the just general mango flavor that's just a little mealy or just something, something a little I don't know. Let's get this on the list so we can move on and talk about some video games. Gritty, a gritty mango. Yeah, mango is, I like mango, but there's something about it that's a little odd at times, I guess I would say. All right, well, we do need to put it on the list. I think it's a better drink than Monster Ultra Strawberry Dreams. That's for sure. The Prime Energy Orange Mango was all right. I mean, it's, as a comparative mango drink, like the Prime Energy is more orange than mango. I think it's a little bit, well, Is it better than Freedom Ice? I don't think it's better than Prime Energy Tropical Punch, I will say. Which is not the best punch flavor, obviously. But it's a pretty, it's a really good, it's a good punch flavor. It's no C4 fruit punch, honestly, which is a heck of a drink and has way more caffeine than Rockstar's fruit punch. So if you're looking for a full load first thing in the morning, might I recommend C4. C4 has a, not to get into some energy drink news here. Actually, let's get this on the list before we get distracted. Where were we? We were looking at Prime Energy Tropical Punch. We're looking at Freedom Ice and Clickbait. Okay, I think this is better than the Blue Raspberry Sour Patch Kids. Is it better than Clickbait? Okay, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna slide this in. Monster, Energy, Ultra, Fiesta, Mango. I feel like I'm reading out like NATO, Lima, Foxtrot. Okay, there it is. It's our new number 29. It's a good drink. This is a good drink. This is a good drink. Solid mango beverage. Mango, turns out. A solid flavor for energy drinks in general. Even if I personally think that sometimes the mango flavor can be a little grimy. Grimy in a way that you're like, does this have 17% alcohol? Is it, like the same way like a fruit flavored bottle of like Cisco can be grimy. What number it was? It is number 29 on our list. Now we just got to finish it, get this full load. C4 has some WWE themed flavors that they have announced and rolled out, but it is not widely available. And it is only being sold by the case. And I am trying to find way. Well, if I have to get a case, I'll get a case. There's two flavors. What are they called here? Let's look. In fact, let's look at the location near me to see if they have it in stock yet, because I would much rather just go over and get it than to... Oh, what the heck. All right, They have two flavors, Ruthless Raspberry and Berry Power Bomb. And then they have some, because they do powders because it's fucking pre-workout also. So they have a bunch of different flavors for the powders as well that are wrestling themed. I don't know. That's a cross section of this show's interests. And so we simply must try the Ruthless Raspberry and the Berry Power Bomb. I would rather not have to buy 12 cans of each because it is, well, it's buy one, get one 50% off mix and match on the cases, but one case is $45. And so buying these two cases of drinks would be $68. And what if they're terrible? You know what I mean? Anyway, but they don't have it in store anywhere near me. I don't know if these are going to ship to, so it's like every day I check and go like, is this the day they show up in stores? Because maybe I could just go get one can from them or not. I don't know how it works. I don't know if they break the cases up or what. But that is my promise to you is that I will do what I can so that we can taste test these drinks and see what the hell is going on, because that's what we're here for. Science. One full load at a time. Yeah, there's just like Like 1 out of every 20 sips, you get a little like, whoa. Whoa. Little action there. I closed the show notes. What am I going to talk about if I can't see the show notes? Ratchet Clank Rift Apart came out on the personal computer. And I have been continuing to play my way through that. That has been, the primary interest around it has been, hey, how well does it run on PC? Because, Sony touted it so much on PlayStation 5 is like, this, we can only do this on the PlayStation 5, these worlds, and, because the word rift, as it may imply, as you may have surmised, probably not, but you are very quickly teleporting from realm to realm in that game. It's like a multi-dimensional sort of thing. And so it's a lot of cases of you walking through a rift and then instantly being in a completely different environment. And it's a really impressive technical thing, I guess. Wherever they're hiding the loading or not, it's loading super fast and they're hiding some, or, whatever the situation is, it's a really cool look. It's a really cool effect. And it's very neat to see in action. And so one of the things with it coming to PC was like, oh, I don't know how they're going to do this. It's going to require an SSD. And it seemed like for a while that maybe they would require an SSD, but they don't. But, you'll see some load times. The slower your drive is, the more loads you'll see. You'll see some full loads. But the game also has direct storage report, and direct storage is an API that Microsoft came up with for, it's kind of on the Xbox side of things, but it is, the short version of it is someone who is not the most technically minded, but it is basically like it'll bypass a lot of your pipeline and shove graphics directly at your GPU, basically. Not a lot of games have supported it on PC, as far as I can tell. The only two I am aware of is are Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and Forspoken. Remember Forspoken? It's okay if you don't. And in Forspoken, it was like, hey, it's faster, but there's still noticeable load times. And so, anyway, all that is to say that it runs very well on PC, at least on this PC, where I do have a direct storage supporting NVMe SSD as my boot drive. So I installed it to my boot drive. All of that stuff. There was one little hitch where you're like, oh, it's not loading up the next area, but it was like pretty minor, all told. Really great, effects and ray tracing and whatever else. But like most importantly, that game is just a wonderful video game. It's a third-person platformer / shooter, as the games have been for a long time now. I think in the early days, it was a little hesitant. I think I was a little hesitant to refer to them as shooters because they felt like platformers first, but you had guns. And nowadays, it feels more like a shooter with some occasional platforming, I guess. Like, it feels like that the balance has maybe shifted in favor of like, there's enemies, gun them down. And then occasionally when you're not in combat, you're hopping around on platforms and doing wall jumps and stuff like that. But to me, that is one of the best looking and playing. Like, it is probably, I'd have to sit there and look at a list to really feel like I'm saying this definitively, but just to throw it out there, I might say Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is the best PlayStation 5 game. Is my favorite kind of like, first party, whatever, exclusive, whatever, the games that appear on PlayStation 5 that you look at and go like, this feels like there's a fidelity here to just the experience, not just the graphics, but also how they integrate the controller, the DualSense controller, and everything else. Like, there's a fidelity to that experience across the board that I think is wonderful. It is it is such a high quality video game. It plays well. The guns are fun to use. They've, it's the thing they come up with every time they every time they're up to bat, Insomniac goes like, all right, we got to come up with like 12 new weird guns. But, one of them kind of has to be a shotgun. One of them needs to be kind of a, standard rapid fire assault rifle equivalent. One of them needs, they have archetypes that they hit for sure. But they have come up with a good number of very fun weapons to use, enemies and encounters where it is fun to use those things, and a story that makes it all kind of come together. And it's just just a wonderful experience, top to bottom. I had a fantastic time playing Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. I don't think I've had a better time, with the possible exception of like Astro's Playroom, which I think is another like delightful little chunk of thing. But it's short. It's it's sort of a weird comparison to make. But I think Ratchet is the best time I've had on a PlayStation 5. That's actually, yes, that is definitely, unless we get into third-party stuff that I just happened to play on PlayStation 5, which even then, I don't know, but like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, I think is the best thing I've played on a PlayStation 5. With those specific caveats or whatever. And the PC version runs great. I'm running it on a 1440p monitor. It's G-Sync, it's 240 hertz on this monitor and stuff. So, the frame rate is always above 60, and it just looks great, feels great. The only thing I guess I would say is that I think playing it without a PlayStation 5 controller, you are missing a slight bit of the experience. If you don't know what you're missing, it's maybe not that big of a deal, but you end up in these situations where guns will have half pulls of the trigger. Where, it's like, if you pull it halfway, you'll aim down sights, or you'll see an arc where the bomb you're going to throw is going to go, and then you pull it the rest of the way to actually throw it. And on a PlayStation 5 controller, they can put hard chunks in the pull of that trigger, like a stop that you have to pull past because of the way their tension triggers work. That it feels great on that controller, and the haptics just across the board are great in that game. On an Xbox 360 controller, I was playing on this, these Hall Effect, this King Kong Pro 2, which I don't know how this became my controller of choice, but this King Kong Pro 2 has become the controller I use nowadays. The haptics of the vibration and whatever else still felt fine, but you don't have any of that stoppage in the trigger. And so, pulling halfway and stopping becomes something that you just have to get used to, and it's funky. And you'll oftentimes pull it a little too far and go, oh shit, I was going to pull it halfway, but here I am throwing bombs, or, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. The game doesn't require a huge level of precision with that stuff, but it's something that is noticeable. Of course, if you have a PlayStation 5 controller, you can just hook it up to a PC, wire it up, and you'll get all of that DualSense stuff. It'll do the controller speaker stuff too, and in something like Returnal and whatever else too with that same thing, which I thought was kind of, I don't know. I always want to disable the controller speaker as quickly as I possibly can. But then if you disable the controller speaker in your Windows settings, I think that disables a lot of the haptics as well, because the haptics are technically a speaker. There's a whole weird, I don't know. I ran into some funky stuff configuring it when Returnal came out. But yeah, it's a few weird things, it's not the first game to do that half trigger pull thing, but the PlayStation 5 controller is uniquely suited to make that a much better experience than it has been in the past. Because in terms of pressure sensitive buttons, Metal Gear Solid 2 had a few weird cases of stuff like that as well, where it's just like, this is funky. Yeah, the GameCube has this kind of built-in hard stop click thing, which is silly. But yeah, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart on PC. Fantastic port of the game. I can't really speak to lower spec systems. I know that's the thing people wanted to see, so I know there's a bunch of videos everywhere of people going like, we plugged a PS4 hard drive into a PC to see how shitty it would run. And you're like, guess what? It runs shitty, but like it's playable. It's shitty, but it's playable, you know. Yeah, wonderful video game. I also spent a little bit of time playing Disney Illusion Island, which is out on Switch. It's a side-scrolling platformer, 1 to 4 players. I think the art style is on par with a certain, like, I don't know if there's like a modern Mickey Mouse cartoon. I'm not actually sure because I'm just not familiar with whatever the cartoon is. But I think I think the art style is done in the style of an existing Mickey Mouse property. It's an interesting concept that they went after here because it is it's a search action game, or a Metroidvania if you must, but there's no, as far as I can tell from what I've played of it so far, there is no combat in it, which is fine. I think it's actually kind of a cool concept to be like, oh, what if we, kind of did this and didn't really give you a... So it's like you jumping over enemies to avoid damage, and but you're still like you're getting additional movement abilities. Basically, you're running around and like, oh, I can't cross this gap. You're like, oh, you need a double jump that has a boost on the second jump. So you meet a guy and he's like, here's a jetpack, Mickey Mouse, and then you do that to, jump across the gap, and then you eventually get a wall jump so that you can jump your way up walls and get up higher, and so on and so forth. So they're filling out this tool set as you play. And it's got a really nice look to it. The story, I think, is fine. You're kind of like it's you, Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy if you're, playing 4 players or whatever. But you're trying to help out some guy who lured you there under the guise of a picnic, and so you're hopping around finding keys and opening doors and finding new abilities to get places, and it's got a map and it's got collectibles and all of those sorts of things. I think it could be cool for a certain type of younger player. My daughter is not able to run and jump in games quite yet. She hasn't really gotten that part down. She can run and she can jump, but she can't do both. So she can't like jump onto things. She can jump straight up over and over again. She's great at that, but she's not quite ready for this game. And I don't know, like I'm approaching it from the, like, when you make a Mickey Mouse game and you decide to invoke the word illusion in it, Castle of Illusion is an amazing video game back on the Genesis. World of Illusion, like there's a legacy to that isn't here in the same way. Those games had combat. Those games, you're jumping on top of enemies, you're throwing apples, and all of that. Like I think that original Castle of Illusion is probably, it's probably one of the top 20 Genesis games, top 10 maybe. I don't know. That'd be an interesting breakdown to figure out. But I think Castle of Illusion is an awesome video game, and it's an all-timer. This is good and fun and very interesting in its ideas, in terms of like, what if we kind of pushed combat to the side and made it so you're like, at least here I haven't finished the game, but so maybe you end up getting a fucking AK-47 at some point, I don't know. But by and large, the game is about you avoiding these enemies and making your way around the world. And it's a choice, right? And I think it kind of leads to a situation where you're like, okay, like none of this is, and I'm an adult playing this game. This game is clearly aimed at a younger audience in a way that I think even Castle of Illusion was not. I think Castle of Illusion actually gets fucking tough in some spots. But Yeah, I don't know. I really do like it. I think it's got a bunch of really neat ideas. It's got a really great look to it, and exploring around the map and finding stuff is good. It's a game that kind of feels like it maybe needs one more thing, and that one more thing doesn't have to be combat. But if I was bouncing around on guys' heads and knocking them out and stuff along the way, that would at least be something else, to some other additional kind of skill-based thing to do. And so instead it feels like this very light experience of just like, okay, yeah. Yes. But a very good look and everything else. So, I do want to stick with it because it's kind of piqued my curiosity just in terms of like, is this game really going to stick to its guns in terms of not having guns? And what do they do with it late game? What do they do to give that game a challenge? What do they do? Is there kind of a, more boss encounter type thing where you've got to do a kind of boss encounter moment without really having combat in your game? And so, yeah, I'm curious about how they pull all of that stuff off along the way. But it makes a really strong first impression. Nice look, great characters. I assume it's just, the jumping probably gets more challenging. Like it's more challenging platforming and whatever else later on. But like early on, not a ton of challenge there if you are at all a seasoned video game player. My daughter was not super interested in it. Again, she's not at a point where she can play a 2D platformer well, because she just doesn't. She can move and she can jump, but she can't really do both simultaneously. So it's really not, she's back on her Mario Kart after kind of not playing it and being bored of it. She's gotten back into it, but now she's grabbed the Switch and she deliberately launches the GBA emulator and launches the old GBA Mario Kart and is playing that instead. I don't know why, but that is the one she's going to. And it has way fewer assists and stuff, so she gets stuck and she runs into issues and stuff here and there. Yesterday she came in, she said she wanted to play Pac-Man. She said she wanted to try Pac-Man. She hadn't played Pac-Man in a long time. So I was trying to get her to understand what a D-pad was, and I was like, Pac-Man, you kind of move in each direction. It's easy to grasp, but I put that on for her, and she moved around a little bit and said, I don't want to play Pac-Man. I was like, yeah, I figured maybe you wouldn't. I got for my Mister, the FPGA based open source retro gaming solution, I purchased it's a controller adapter that lets you hook up PlayStation controllers directly to it, and it works a little differently than that's not some there are USB converters for those sorts of things that have existed for decades. These are a little different because it's kind of it treats it like the native port, and this is specifically called Snacks. There's another earlier format called Snack that is used for if you want to hook up NES controllers or other different original controllers to it. You can do that. I wanted one for the PlayStation because I want to eventually hook dance mats and other stuff up to the Mister and play DDR or play whatever else. And so I hooked all that up last night and I was messing around with it and I playing some Ape Escape. And she came over and sat with me and watched some Ape Escape. And she was like, what is going on? She like, this is boring. She eventually didn't want to see any more Ape Escape. So, well, why don't we play something for you? And I was like, she understands the concept of driving games. So what do I do? And so the first thing I came up with was Rockman Battle and Chase, the Mario Kart ripoff Mega Man game that came out for the PlayStation. Fired that up for her. She was like, "Oh, look at can you choose different cars? I want to be the lady." So she played as Roll. That game sucks. That's a shitty game. She enjoyed playing it for a little bit, but it's a shitty game. and you have to win, so it's like I ended up winning the first 2 tracks, and we went on to the third one, and then she was like, we're done with this. So I was like, okay, well, what else is there that's like Mario Kart like? And I was like, maybe is there like a Koro-Q game? Maybe we could, so I'm like looking through the directory going like, there's got to be Koro-Q games in here. And as I was scrolling, I found Chocobo Racing. And so we ended up playing Chocobo Racing for the PlayStation 1 for like 20 minutes. It's interesting when you go back and play some of these old games and they run at 60 frames a second. Not all of them do, but a lot of them do. And you're like, you know what? It's bullshit. That more games don't run like this nowadays. Because like weird fucking off-brand Mario Kart ripoff was just like, yeah, fuck it, this is 60. And yeah, I don't know. There's some kind of fucking back in my day whatever thing there, I'm sure, but it was just like I was not expecting that game to run at 60 and be like, oh shit, crazy. Maybe we'll get into Crash Team Racing next time. That's, I think, the obvious choice, but I was looking for something that would maybe be a little more, I don't know, friendly or something. Yeah, I don't know. Chocobo Racing, not a great game. Not a great game. She wanted to play as the white mage who floats around on a magic carpet, and so we did that for a little bit. And that was neat. But ultimately, modern Mario Kart is probably the best thing for her because it has a level of assistance that will help her get through the races a little more often instead of getting stuck on it. Chocobo Racing was really bad about having shit on the sides of the track that you just get stuck on. And you're like, okay, let me get you out of here. Let me back you up, turn you, get you back on the road. Okay, go. I had to do that a lot with both Rockman Battle and Chase and Chocobo Racing. Just very frustrating level design there. But yeah, no, it's interesting for sure to watch her mess around with some of that stuff. Why don't we get into some of the news? The Nintendo Switch 2? There are Video Games Chronicles. Andy Robinson is reporting that development kits for the next Nintendo Switch are in the hands of key partner studios and that a launch is planned for next year. Second half of 2024 is what they're reporting here. He is citing multiple people with knowledge of Nintendo's next-gen console plans. So that sounds pretty well sourced. And there's not a ton of detail here, but according to this Video Games Chronicle article, the people that they did speak to indicated that the next-gen console would be able to be used in portable mode similar to the Nintendo Switch. I don't think that's a huge surprise. I think that, again, this form factor that they have hit upon of the dockable portable has worked really well for them and seems like a no-brainer for them to do again. So, how that ends up, is there anything different about it? I think becomes the larger question, because that's when you think about Nintendo and the things that they've done with their platforms time and time again. Usually there's something weird about it. Usually there's something else, whether it's the Wii remote or the Wii U tablet or or whatever else. Nothing in this story is indicating that there's anything different about it, but that's, again, there's things that we just don't know. There's things that this article is very, like, hey, yeah, there's a lot of specifics that are closely guarded. And remember that when I've seen a lot of people kind of running away, like taking this story and running away with it and saying like, oh, there's no details about backwards compatibility in here, so they're not going to be backwards compatible. There was, little bits and pieces there, and some of the other reporting that's happened around this. But I think right now, the most you can say about a lot of that stuff, short any actual reporting and actual sourcing or whatever else, I think the most you can say about a lot of these things is, well, we don't know. Because remember the state we're at now. So this is, look at this. The story on Video Games Chronicle is saying that key partner studios have dev kits. That probably means that Andy's sources are largely outside of Nintendo and are third parties that have it, or are getting one or have gone through like the initial phases of disclosure. And my understanding of how a lot of that kind of disclosure stuff works is that, even before you're getting a dev kit, you're taking meetings with Nintendo. They're walking you through, here's our vision for this stuff, but they're telling you what they're ready to tell you. And backwards compatibility. Okay, if you're giving dev kits to studios and saying, we're giving these to you so that you can have games ready for next Christmas, you don't need to tell them if it's backwards compatible or not. They don't need to know. So you don't tell them what they don't need to know. You give them dev kits and say, go make new games. And so details like that are not part of that, are oftentimes, is my understanding, not part of that initial disclosure. Not part of, not really something you're going to initially see in these dev kits early on. Maybe once someone gets a dev kit and really starts pulling it apart, they'll find something like, oh, there's a lot of stuff here for backwards compatibility. Maybe, but they're not going to pull it apart, and they're not going to fucking leak that if they did, because this is already something Nintendo would not be happy about. Digging into, like, pulling the dev kit apart, breaking all the seals on it, and going like, what's in here? They're not going to do that. So, I think with a lot of those details and people going like, oh, it's not going to be backwards compatible. Like, how dumb is Nintendo to do? Like, do not buy into we don't know. Do not buy into the weird YouTube rage machine on this stuff, on any stuff, really. The one bit about backwards compatibility in this story, I will just read the full paragraph that he has written here. Other details such as backwards compatibility support for Switch games, physical and digital, remains unclear. Nintendo has said it wants to convert as many of Switch's 100 million plus user base as possible to its next system, although some third-party publishers are said to have expressed concern that legacy support for Switch games could negatively affect sales of next-gen titles. And so that's really the only bit about backwards compatibility in here is them saying, we don't know, but also some third parties have said like, oh man, you're going to gut our ability to sell games if you are backwards compatible. To which I'll say, Nintendo only cares about third parties up to a certain point. And then past that point, they do not care. And I don't think that it would stop them from making a backwards compatible system. I think they want to ease this transition. And the best way to ease that transition is to make the console backwards compatible. It's hard for me to envision a world where Nintendo puts this out and it's not backwards compatible. But with Nintendo, sometimes you just never know. So we'll see. But again, if one of their goals is to, maintain the Nintendo account system from one platform to the next, what a novel idea, using the same account system on multiple platforms instead of inventing a whole new one and then going like, well, we made it so you could tie the two accounts together, so you can tie your Wii U Nintendo account to your Nintendo account to your Nintendo platform account to your Nintendo your my Wii U account to your friend code to this, and all of that garbage. I think that and if Nintendo was worried, backwards compatibility prevents them from selling new like if they wanted to re-release Super Mario Odyssey or something, right? Like, what's the number of games that a Nintendo would be like, we've got to re-release it. Like they've done this a lot. They've spent the last several years re-releasing Wii U games on Switch, but that's because the numbers on Wii U were so bad that it made sense for them to do that, because they could take an honest look at it and go like, man, we've sold so many Switches. The vast majority of these Switch owners have never seen any of these fucking Wii U games. So let's put them out again. This time they can't say that. This time they would be better served by instead creating a situation where when you play Tears of the Kingdom on a new unit, it runs better. You know, if there was a scenario where they could have improved performance on new hardware, that would be a better story for them to tell. That would be something that would make people want to move forward for a variety of reasons. And so I think that the case for backwards compatibility is really strong. It always is, but I think it's really strong for them this time around in a way that it sometimes isn't for them in particular. So I don't think that, like, this stuff about third parties expressing concern. Third parties should be expressing concern that, like, we're worried that Nintendo is going to ship Nintendo games on this thing, and as a result, no one's going to buy our games because they're just going to buy the first party stuff. You know, the same way Nintendo third party support has been for the last 15 years, 20 years. So, I would take that with I would take that as it reads. I would say, you know, as he has written here, some third-party publishers are said to have expressed concern that legacy support for Switch games could negatively affect sales of next-gen titles. Okay. Noted. I don't think that's going to necessarily be like I don't think Nintendo is going like, oh, well, okay, we'll shut it off. Like, it's not going to happen. Two sources Video Games Chronicle spoke to suggested that the console would launch with an LCD screen, meaning not an OLED, because, you know, at launch they're going to try and keep costs down, which is a shame, because that OLED Switch looks very nice. And that's what they say. In order to bring down costs, especially considering the increased storage needed for higher fidelity games, the current Switch comes with just 32 gigs of internal memory, while many current-gen PlayStation and Xbox games are over 100 gigabytes. Like its predecessor, the new Nintendo console will also accept physical games via a cartridge slot, the sources said. So this kind of sounds like a Switch, but more powerful, which is kind of what the reports have been indicating here for a little while now. And then what was it? Was it something in the Activision, the FTC lawsuit where they said they expected the Switch predecessor to be as powerful as, kind of like somewhere in that PlayStation 4 power band or something? Was that where that came from, or is that something else? I don't remember exactly where that came from, but like, I remember at the time reading it and being like, that seems underwhelming, because that feels like that's what the Switch is targeting right now and not necessarily doing it. But I don't know, man. They talked to Dr. Serkan Toto, who's a consultant based out of Tokyo. You probably have seen his name before. And he says that a 2024 launch would make sense since it is projected to see double-digit declines in Switch hardware and software sales this year, and that it's been on the market for 7 years. So I would say his quote here is, I would generally say that looking at Nintendo's financials, it seems clear that it's time for a new piece of hardware in 2024. Hardware is already projected to fall 16.5% year on year in the current fiscal, while the minus for software is expected to hit 15.9%. The only way to stop these losses from totally ballooning next fiscal year is a new device, and the second half of 2024 sounds like a realistic release window to me. There's also some quotes here from Christopher Dring, who is billed here as the head of games B2B for ReedPop. You'll see his name on, is it GameDeveloper.com? Or no, is he... I forget which one ReedPop owns. And he is saying that a 2024 release would fit with Nintendo's historical trend of launching hardware mid-cycle compared with PlayStation and Xbox. So yeah, that's yeah. I mean, that's really kind of it there in terms of like, you know, and then it becomes like a lot of speculation about what software they could have available, or basically the idea that if they're holding off until late 2024 for this, holding off is maybe a weird way to think about it, but that there's a part of them that is like, okay, they want to make sure they have a lot of consoles ready at launch to maybe avoid some of the inventory problems they ran into with the initial Switch. But also, you know, hey, what are they doing with games? You know, it's felt for a while now that their software story has felt strange. Where it's like you've got some announced games that we haven't heard about in a while, like a Metroid Prime 4, and whatever else. I think Super Mario Wonder feels like in this context, you look at it and go like, this feels like a really good end of life cycle Mario game. And then you've got your full-fledged follow-up to Super Mario Odyssey ready, if not at launch, then near launch. And you know, Metroid Prime 4, I don't. It's hard to think about that as a factor one way or the other. Yes, that game will ship at some point. Maybe it'll be the last game out the door on the regular Switch. Maybe it'll end up being an early Switch 2 game. Either way, I don't think that franchise is enough of a big deal to be like something they're going to hang their hat on for launch and be like, here it is, you Metroid Prime 4, you know, or whatever else, you know. That's not a big enough name for them. But also, they just put out another Zelda, so it's not like that team. Well, shit, man, you know, hey, probably not, right? But, you know, you look at Tears of the Kingdom as being kind of an add-on, or you know, like that. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that it is building off of a lot of what Breath of the Wild did from a technology perspective and whatever else. It's not a 100% brand new video game, right? Is there some Skunkworks team that has been deep in pre-production on the real Zelda sequel this whole time? You know, I doubt it. I think it would be too soon. Like, if they launch next Christmas, you know, if we're a year out from, hey, there's another new Zelda game, I think that would be too many. so probably not a Zelda at launch, which is fine. That'll give them time to do something crazier down the line. But probably a full-fledged Mario. It's been long enough since they have approached the Mario franchise with a full-on brand new game. Wonder looks awesome. I'm super excited for it. I don't mean to like cast that aside, but as a 2D game, it kind of, you know, it's not necessarily the next big thing in the Mario franchise. You know, they'll have, I would assume that they would have some kind of big proper 3D Mario game ready for launch again. Whether that's an Odyssey 2 or you know, they just come up with a new word. Who knows? I wonder if they will capitalize on some of the stuff they did in that Bowser DLC, where it had this more kind of direct open world vibe to it. Because Bowser's Fury is really good, but it's also really interesting just from a design, like from a design for a Mario game. It's a really interesting little thing. And you know, you play it and you go like, this feels like them getting their feet wet for something. This feels like something where they had some ideas that they wanted to try out before they did it for real somewhere else. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the next Mario game capitalizes on all of that stuff, because maybe they came away from Bowser's Fury going like, this is really cool for a small kind of constrained thing, but we don't think it would work for, you know, maybe they just look at it and go like, all right, no. Or maybe they look at it and go like, yep, all right, that's what we want the next Mario game to be, but blown out to 9 times that size or whatever. Which could be really interesting as well. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that, you know, 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 I think that, you Yeah, I don't know. And then what else, I'm trying to because like Splatoon 3 is still, I mean, this would pave the way. I guess maybe they launch with Mario Kart. There had been talk a little while ago about like, oh, the Mario Kart team is working on something and they're thinking about what's next or whatever else. Like so there's still one more, and I hate that I know this now. This is the thing of like my daughter being a Mario Kart fan now. It's dark. That I know that there is still one more wave of courses coming to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and then they'll be done with it. And so that is happening by the end of this calendar year. And so that would give them a full year from the end of new content for that Mario Kart to then here's Mario Kart 9. And when you look at the sales of Mario Kart 8 and how fucking bonkers it is, I could very easily see them looking at that scenario and being like, we should launch with a fucking Mario Kart game. Let's move some fucking hardware. We're already going to move some hardware, but let's fucking go. Like, I could very easily see them prioritizing Mario Kart in a way that they haven't really, I guess I would say. Since what? I mean, what was the... Has there ever been a Nintendo launch that has been supported with a new Mario Kart game at launch? Was GBA a launch game? N64 was not a launch game. It was close, but it was not a launch game. And there, that was still when things came out staggered. So again, I remember when we were waiting for the import copy of Mario Kart 64 to show up, and how the world's biggest Mario Kart fan I've ever known, his heart was broken that day as we played it, and he said, "This game is not that fun, y'all." He was so crushed. But yeah, I would almost, if I was placing bets, if I was a betting man, I could very much see them for business reasons saying, fuck yeah, Mario Kart at launch. Because it will have been a year or so since they ended support for the previous one. I think that it makes a lot of sense for them to, and between that and the rumors that they were thinking about, new Mario Kart a while ago, if we assume that those rumors came from a sound place, and that they have been thinking about what's next for Mario Kart already, then that timing all kinds of lines up in a weird way. But what else? Like, does the system have a hardware gimmick? We were talking about this a while ago, and I just kind of was spitballing and came up with the idea of what if there was a GPU or some kind of power in the dock itself, and they used that to play local multiplayer games where, the thing on the television was different than the thing on your Switch. And that might be a fun way for them to do local multiplayer games in a way that they, in a way that kind of merges a lot of their ideas over the years. That's not me. Again, that's not coming from anywhere. This is not me like slyly going like, I heard it, I think that would be cool. That was something when I first started hearing about the Switch initially, was my big question for the people I was hearing. Cause I was in the same boat where I was talking to someone at a third party who had gone through disclosure and whatever else. And they were like, yeah, it's weird. It's like a handheld thing. And like, that was already kind of well known at that point. I think the handheld bit, not publicly, but it was like well known in a lot of circles that like, that's what they were doing. But the question became like, is there power in the dock? Yes or no? And I think that putting power in the dock, or even if they can do it some other way with streaming tech or whatever the fuck else, like some way for them to say, hey, the TV can act as a hub for your multiplayer gaming experiences in the same way that hooking a GBA up to the GameCube did. Those were cool, weird scenarios, right? And I think that that's the type of cool, weird scenario that I think Nintendo can capitalize on in, let's say, 4 to 6 games over the course of a generation, and then never think about it again. And I think it would be really good for that 4 to 6 games, and then like the 2 third-party games that support it. Ubisoft comes along and goes, I don't know, we made a Zombie U minigame collection, and it takes advantage of this. And then, Namco comes along and says, here's Pac-Man Versus 2. Exactly, yeah. Pac-Man Versus is a good one. And then, hey, Final Fantasy, now you can carry the bucket yet again. And whatever else. And you could end up in some situations where, like, think about like an Animal Crossing game where everyone is on their own screen in their own town, same as it is now. But what if you had a central hub screen that was like, I don't know, like what if the town is more active and you're seeing like, hey, here's what everyone else is doing in the fishing tournament, or, like here's other views of what's going on around town, or some other, maybe that's not vital enough. But like, I don't think it has to be vital. I think you have a few experiences that are like crazy vital, and then some stuff that you're like, this is nice. But I don't know. In a world where they want to keep costs down, having substantial power in the dock might be hard. So maybe if the console is powerful enough, it streams to the dock. It streams an alternate view to the dock. I don't know. That doesn't sound like a great technological solution as well. But I think that scenario of, TV as a central hub, it enables a lot of stuff, like a lot of weird mini game. Like you could do a fucking interesting things with a Mario Party at that point if you were doing something like that. A lot of card game concepts and football type of concepts where you're calling plays or playing your cards or whatever else. I think that's enabled there. Could you build a Nintendo Land sequel around this multi-screen concept or something? Sure, you could. Of course, you could. So I don't know. I think that would be neat if they did that. I don't think they'll do that. But I wonder what they will do, if they will do something, or if this is going to be them finally just sitting back and saying like, yeah, you know what? This Switch, pretty good. It's getting a little old though, so we made a better one, and that's it. Is this the generation for Nintendo to just say, nah, man, it's another one of those, but it goes harder. And is harder for you to play on the fucking PC, you scumbags. Like, that's got to be something that they're thinking about a lot, too. It's just like, fuck, man. So fucking sick of this. So sick of seeing these assholes. We've got to lock this shit down. We'll see. I don't know. Nintendo... I guess there has been a little bit of change over at Nintendo since the Switch happened. Right? A little bit. Some of those concepts. But we'll see. I don't know. Does it still have removable Joy-Cons, or are they like, fuck that, man? Or are they even crazier? Do they make removable controllers that have like even weirder features on them? They could. Do they still allow for sideways Joy-Cons, or are they just like, did people do that? Is that dumb? Do people do that? Or do they just go like, nah, you know what? We think that people should buy a second Switch, and we know you will because we have like you look at the sales of the last Switch. Do they just go like, yeah, our use case scenarios, we think you should just buy another one, and do it that way. And if it's docked to a TV, then bring your Pro controller, and hey, we'll let you use your Pro controller from the old Switch if you want. And a lot of people in chat right now saying like maybe they'll fix the Joy-Con drift. No, they're gonna make it twice as bad. That's the Nintendo promise. It's going to be fucking way worse. Double the drift. for new Mario Kart Double Drift. We'll see. I think that they're in a really interesting position, because the Switch has been, like they've successfully carved out their own, and this was how the Wii was also, but the Wii U kind of, I think, shook everyone's confidence in that stuff. But now we have a Nintendo that has been in a relatively dominant position, even if it's a weird, we don't really think of it, the Switch, as competing with the existing Xbox and PlayStation consoles. It's kind of its own thing. But they're in a spot where they don't have to innovate. If they want to take a cycle off and just be like, this one's more powerful, fucking deal with it, they could. I don't think that people would reject that, is my point. But I don't know. Nintendo just seems like they always want to fucking do. There's Sakurai's still putting out videos on YouTube, and there was a little bit in one of his more, I think, if not the most recent, then one of the more recent videos, where he just kind of talked a little bit about like Smash Brothers and the idea of another one. And him, I think a lot of what he was saying is like, I can't really, because he's kind of semi-retired is how it's kind of billed. And, everyone's heard the stories about how he fucking was on an IV so he could get to work and finish Smash Brothers and do all that crazy shit. But then also there was some talk in there about like another Smash Brothers game. And he was like, yeah, I don't know how they make one of those without me at this point. And it didn't seem like that was coming from some pompous, like, how dare, it was more just like, he's a motherfucker who knows how to make those games. And there's no one else there that could take the reins right now. There's no one ready to accept the torch if it is passed. Is more of the vibe of that, of just like, yeah, I have to kind of be the one to make it because no one else has been trained to make one. And and so, presumably we see another Smash Brothers on the next Nintendo platform, right? I mean, I don't want to sit here and make bold claims, but I think maybe they'll make another Smash Brothers one of these days. And then I got to thinking, like, what do you do there? What do you do with another Smash Brothers? Like, the last one has everybody in it. You could always make another one and do more moves. There's more characters you could tap into, of course. You could put proper netcode in it for once. That'd be nice. But man, that just seems like one of those real, and again, I don't fucking, hey, if I had the answer to this question, maybe I would be the one showing up and being like, hook the IV up to me, man. I'm ready to fucking go. But yeah, they called it Ultimate. There's just a vibe around that game of just like, we're making the biggest one we can. You can't make a bigger one after this. This is it. This is everybody is here. Everybody is here. So you got to reboot it, right? If everybody was there, then if you're going to make another one, you have to start from the idea of nobody is here. Now what? And I think you very quickly get back to like, well, Mario needs, we got to put Mario in this, right? And then they go, okay, yes. Now, what does Mario do? And they're like, he throws a fireball. Like, okay. And you probably stumble your way back into Mario's exact move set, like all over again, like holistically, because it makes sense. But like, I don't know. Yeah. What do you do? Do you reboot that whole thing from a narrative perspective and let that give you the leeway to make dramatic changes to what that game is. Like, do you make dramatic changes to what that game is? Would that just piss people off? Like, I look at it and go like, man, what if they, if you'll fucking go with me, what if they made a real fighting game? That'd be cool. That'd be pointless because the people that play Smash don't want a real fighting game. They want Smash. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you do with that at this point. Because I think if you make dramatic, some people are saying like, oh, Power Stone or do this or do that, or like, I think if you're changing camera perspectives and doing all of this, like, that's a different game. You could make that game. You could make a Nintendo character Power Stone game. There's no reason not to, but you wouldn't call that a Smash Brothers game. Because people would be fucking pissed. So I don't know. I don't know what you do with that thing at this point. Because it's not like, I mean, well, what do you do? Do you go get, you go get another fresh batch of guest characters and have a good time with that? And people love that stuff. There's a lot. Like, how many more Fire Emblem characters have they not put in Smash? Because there's probably like another 20 or so of those they could put in. Right? So you could do that. Yeah, I don't know. I would go fucking hog wild stupid with the guest characters and say, all right, here's we get the Master Chief and we got fucking Ratchet, Aloy. Like, I would go get other hardware manufacturers, first party guys for fun. Because I think that would be like another weird, kind of new frontier for them to explore that would be exciting and weird for people. But I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. But yeah, I think the rest of it is a little bit, I talking through this story with you here today, this morning, I am becoming increasingly convinced in my own mind that they launch with a new Mario Kart game. That is solidifying in my head as like, that seems like sound business right there. Goddamn. So we'll see. And we're due for a Mario game. In other non-Nintendo news, Sony has rolled out beta firmware for the PlayStation 5. As of yesterday, I got my email, and they have added some accessibility features, like you can basically have two controllers assigned to one input. So if you're, like if you're letting a kid play, or like someone needs some additional help, you can hold the other controller over here and help them play. Which is cool. They have Dolby Atmos support. Some changes to how some of the parties and group stuff work, which I use that stuff so infrequently, meaning I don't think I've been in a party on the PlayStation 5 since like launch week or something. I don't think I just, yeah. And same with Xbox. I don't think I have been in an Xbox group, like a whatever group chat or group, party. It's a party. I have not been in an Xbox party since the Xbox Series X came out. It's just a mixture of like, I play games on PC, and even when I'm playing console games, we are getting together on Discord to do stuff. Xbox, I know they both to an extent have some Discord functionality built in, but the Xbox stuff is more direct, which is funny considering didn't Sony invest in Discord, and their Discord integration is worse. Anyway, new stuff for tournaments. You can react to messages with emojis now Finally, goddamn. Support for larger SSDs. You know how that PlayStation 5 has got a slot in there waiting for you to add an additional SSD. Previously, those were limited at 4 terabytes. Now, if you happen to have an 8 terabyte SSD, you can put it in your PlayStation 5. 8 terabyte SSDs, by the way, I think are like $1,000. So I think that's a lot. I think that's a lot of money. Also, I don't think there are enough PlayStation 5 games that you need to have installed I installed this firmware yesterday and then was spending some time fucking around in the PlayStation 5 menus. And I was like, oh, I'm going to uninstall a lot of games. And so I went through and I uninstalled like 20 games. I was like, oh, I got room for days. I have a 1 terabyte SSD in there. And then, of course, the built-in terabyte. And then I have an external SSD that PlayStation 4 games are installed to. So I have this exact same setup on the Xbox as well. I have their little card thing you plug in the back. And then I also have an external drive plugged in. Yes, you can adjust the volume and maybe even turn off the beep sound that the PlayStation makes when you turn it on and off, which is kind of cool. I think the coolest feature here, it is billed as an accessibility feature, but I turned it on and I like it just, for myself. You can enable haptics on the menu. And so as you are moving around the menu, the controller will vibrate a little bit as you go. And if you push in a direction that you can't go in, it vibrates a little harder. Like, nope, can't go that way. It's a good, I like little touches like that on menus. And I think, phone, like the kind of like the vibration press that phones do, I think that's cool too. So I enabled that. And I thought it was pretty neat. Probably not something, if you are one of those people that is already complaining about battery life on PlayStation 5 controllers, maybe haptics on the menu are not a thing you need, but I think it's neat. And so I turned it on and I'm a big fan. Yeah, so that firmware is out there. They're billing it as like their summer beta. And I'm going to scroll to the bottom of this and see if they're still taking signups. It doesn't look like it. Or at least if they are, it's not linked to on this page. But they send out invites, and when they send out their invites, the codes they send out are good for 4 uses. So find somebody that has one and hit them up for it, I guess. Maybe they haven't given them out already. The other big PlayStation thing. This is the most bootsy ass looking website. I don't, not to talk shit, because I don't even have a website. But this is a Tom Henderson penned story, and he has become somewhat known as a leaker, insider, whatever you want to call it. And so this story appeared on keytogaming.com, which there's like, when you scroll down, they have a link at the bottom that says review ethics. And I'm like, oh yes, what is this website's review ethics? And you get down to the bottom and click on it, and it's just lorem ipsum. It's like, there's nothing here. Privacy policy, same deal. Contact page, same deal. Like, this looks like a fake fucking website. And so initially I was like, what the fuck is this? But this is apparently a Tom Henderson written story. Eurogamer has also kind of chimed in on it. As well, which kind of gives it an additional air of like credibility that this website is what it says it is. But and now it is broken. Now their homepage is completely broken. Anyway, they have a story. about the PlayStation 5 Pro. PlayStation 5 Pro Project Trinity is what they are referring to it as. It is a short story. Let's see. According to sources who asked to remain anonymous, PlayStation 5 Pro is in development as codenamed Trinity. It's been in development since early 2022, with sources citing that although the rumors of a canceled PS5 Pro project are always fun to read, Trinity has been the only project in the works for the Pro model. Dates are tentative, but demo events for the PS5 Pro are apparently already ongoing, with the majority of studios receiving dev kits by late November 2023. Remember that they at one point they used the code names Neo and Morpheus, so Trinity is not completely out of the ordinary for that, but boy, they're running out of them. What are you gonna, all right. So not a lot of specs here, but the story does claim that the performance targets are improved and consistent frames per second at 4K, a new performance mode for 8K resolution, and accelerated ray tracing. This is a lot of the PlayStation 5 Pro talk has been very concerning, I guess I would say, for me, because it's hard for me. It just doesn't. This generation feels like it is so weird in terms of it getting off the ground and going, that the idea of an updated PS5 feels very weird. I will say that it's very easy to kind of scoff at the idea of them mentioning an 8K mode here, but it does exist. And that could potentially be a marketing point. The same way when the PlayStation 4 Pro came out, they really, really, really focused on 4K. Now, the PS4 Pro was not really ready for actual true 4K. Fuck, man, I would say the goddamned PlayStation 5 is not ready for 4K, considering the trade-offs that we have to deal with in terms of frame rate to get to those resolutions. So yeah, do they roll out the checkerboard up-rendering techniques that they used on the PS4 Pro, but then now it's for 8K? Who knows? Who knows? This story does not have a ton of technical detail. Trinity appears to be PlayStation's last bits of major hardware for this generation. And after reporting on almost everything from the DualSense Edge controller to Project Q to the new wireless earbuds, the next time you hear on a PlayStation hardware report from me will likely be on the PlayStation 6, which is currently targeting a 2028 release date. Like I said, I think if Eurogamer had not taken this story and talked about it, I probably would have passed on this, because it has this mix of being on this random fucking website that looks broken, without a byline on it directly, which is also weird. And then just a really shady looking thing. And then part of this story, it feels very mechanically written. I don't know. But Eurogamer has taken that and spent some time talking about it. They're kind of breaking down the little bits in this and saying, like, the concept of accelerated ray tracing may simply be achieved by clock speed boosts, or it may be the case that current or future AMD tech could be brought into play. It's also conceivable that Mark Cerny and his team have their own custom ray tracing designs. An 8K performance mode again seems to suggest custom hardware, but quite why 8K receives such a focus when a 4K performance mode makes more sense is a touch baffling. At this point, the concept of the Pro console seems viable, but I suspect like the PS4 Pro before it, it's going to require an official reveal from Sony and some compelling demos to make the concept seem worthwhile. That's from Richard Ledbetter over at Digital Foundry. And yeah, that's his point is well taken here. He says, in fairness, if there's a sense of being underwhelmed here, we had the exact same reaction to the first PS4 Pro leaks, which is true. Because I think when the first specs for the PS4 Pro, or even just conceptually the idea of a half-step console, PS4 Pro, was being floated, it was this idea of, because again, it came attached to this notion of 4K. And 4K became the driving point for PS4 Pro in a lot of the leaks and a lot of everything else. A lot of it was just like, here's the weird rendering technique we came up with that's going to let us hit 4K without having to really hit 4K. And here's how we're going to do this. And so it was a lot of smoke and mirrors around how we're going to make 4K seem like a real thing. And I feel like in practice, when you look at the PlayStation 4 Pro, the 4K stuff was the least interesting thing about it. You know, just having like a little bit more power on tap helped. Certainly, it helped extend the PlayStation 4 hardware cycle, I think, by having a more viable console longer. And but I also think that by the end of the generation, you hit a real downside where anyone that didn't buy a Pro, like some of those late model PS4 games, and I'm sure this is still the case, right? Because some of these PS5 games are coming to still came out on PlayStation 4. Running some of those games on a base PS4 fucking sucked, dude. It got rough. You know, like clearly developers were targeting the PS4 Pro by the end of that cycle. And I think the sales story probably painted a picture that allowed them to do that, where they're like, oh, we've sold enough PS4 Pros that we can do this because the majority of people buying games are running a Pro, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, exactly. Cyberpunk got pulled off the fucking store for how bad it was. Remember that thing running on a base PS4 or a base Xbox One back at launch? Oh my God. Woo. Really wild. Really wild. So I don't know. The PS4 Pro to me didn't, it made more sense on the Xbox side simply because I think the Xbox One was underpowered and they were getting their ass kicked for a variety of reasons. At least when the Xbox One X came out, they could say, we've got a good, solid piece of hardware out there now. Something they could feel good about. Because everything they had up to that point was not that. Oof, it was definitely not that. But yeah, I don't know. Like Mr. Ledbetter is right. This is exactly how I felt when the PS4 Pro rumors started up. Was this just arms folded like, fuck, man, really? No, man, fucking don't do this. Don't do this. And I think the PS4 Pro worked out better than I would have thought it did at that point. And so at this point, everything's so different this time around, man. This feels bad. This feels bad to me. And I got another email into the podcast this week from someone saying like, it doesn't feel like the generation's even started yet. And I don't know how widespread that feeling is. But something about the nature of like, hey, we're going to come out with more powerful hardware next year feels gross when I think about where the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are at in terms of, availability. Like they're both available a lot more widely now than they were, right? But in terms of games coming out and whatever else, and maybe just things have just been disrupted due to everything that happened during the pandemic, and it's just never going to feel right again. or it'll feel right next time. Like when maybe in 2028 when the PlayStation 6 comes out, maybe it will feel right then, and maybe this whole generation is just weird and cursed because of the weird stumbly start it had around the pandemic. And so maybe it's just never going to feel right. But that, to me, it just, I guess I would say, I don't, do players, and then this is not a question that I feel like I can answer because I'm playing a lot of games on PC these days, and my PC is more powerful than both of those consoles. So it's kind of a weird, so I'm trying to take myself out of it a little bit if I can. Do you think PS5 owners feel like they've gotten their money worth out of the PlayStation 5? Like if Sony rolls up next year, they're going to get through holiday not mentioning this thing if they can help it, right? If we assume it's coming out next year, next Christmas. Yeah, everyone in chat is saying absolutely not at all, hell no. I think for Sony to get out there and try to get people to re-up for who knows how much money they charge for a PS5 Pro. I think them getting out there and saying, now buy the new, more powerful one. And I look at the number of games they have shipped themselves and third parties and just like all the delays and everything that's happened. And some of those games have been underwhelming and whatever else. Like it feels fucking bad. This feels like it is. And, you know, hey, this industry is really good at pushing the limits of what its most ardent fans will accept, right? Like that's what it's all about. Like, hey, will they accept buying a battle pass for a $60 game? We think they will. Yeah, it turns out they super will. Turns out that's not a problem. We were stupid to even worry about it. Will they accept if we're charged $10 for PS4 to PS5 upgrades? They're going to be mad about it. So we got to slow play it. We'll give them a good window where they're free and then come out and say, now it's not free anymore. Okay, all right, okay. We can do that. And this has been, you know, yes, exactly. All the way back to getting people to pay to play online, which was crazy back then. It is crazier by the day. I think for PlayStation to get out there and say, we've got an all new, more powerful console for you, when it doesn't feel like the PlayStation 5 has quite yet gotten off the ground, is that will be the biggest test yet for what will this fan base accept. What will these aficionados, these game fans, what will these diehard game fans accept? Yeah, PlayStation VR is a great, PlayStation VR felt like a fire and forget kind of thing. In terms of a marketing, I don't know. I need to play Cosmic Smash, I guess. I forgot that even happened. Because they're so bad at marketing PlayStation VR products. So maybe they, and I look at it and go like, maybe they just have to roll on like everything's normal now and try to put the COVID stuff, the pandemic stuff, like all of that behind them. And just go like, hey man, what would we do if none of that ever happened? We would launch a pro console. Okay, let's do it. Maybe it'll be fucking weird, but this generation is already cursed with that. The early part of this generation is already fucked and strange. So maybe we just need to fucking trudge forward and just like, hey, we'll wipe the slate when the PlayStation 6 comes out and hopefully everything will be back to normal, but this generation's going to feel a little wonky no matter what. And so maybe that's a feeling that is just going to persist and never quite be fixed. And they're just going to move forward and just make it happen. I just, I don't know. Are they going to upgrade it in a way that makes it on par with a 40 series card? Probably not, because they still have to hit certain thermals, this and price point that and whatever else, right? So I don't, like I don't think that feels good. It doesn't feel good. Like, that's the thing. We can logic our way into saying, hey, here's why they would do this, or here's when they would do this, or whatever, and go like, oh, that makes logical sense. But none of it feels good. None of it feels right, I guess, is the point. You know what they need to do? I remember when, before the PlayStation 5 came out, and there was all this high-minded talk about what the PlayStation 5 was going to be, and there was some discussion. It sounded like it was happening internally that, like, the PlayStation 5 could be a console that represented the full legacy of PlayStation, and that they were going to take time to honor that full legacy, and that a lot of people were taking that to mean, holy shit, this thing is going to run PS3 games. And it didn't. And it, you can stream them. It's not the same. It'd be kind of cool. Like, it would be kind of cool if they put out a PS5 Pro and they said any PlayStation disc you put in this will work. That'd be cool. They're not going to do that, but that was I remember some of the reporting at the time was like that was something that they were at least considering, or that there was some thought around the legacy of the PlayStation, and what that would mean was, weird. But, like, coming together to honor all of that, or whatever else, it would be fascinating. Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. But it'd be neat. Instead, it's more likely that they'll release one without a disc slot at all. That seems to be still happening. I think a lot of people have gotten confused, because there's a little bit of discussion as well around the idea of a slim PlayStation 5, but it sounds like what that, the reporting, again, some of that coming from a Tom Henderson amongst others, was this notion of them kind of smoothing out the PlayStation 5 line, and instead of making two of them, just making one, which would line up with, like, hey, we're going to start making a PS5 Pro, so we need to simplify the existing PlayStation 5 process, and so let's make all of them with no disc slots, and instead, we will sell a bundle that will come with a disc drive that you plug into the back and clamp on, or something, some insane setup like that, which works because you're not reading anything off those discs anyway. All they're doing is installing to the hard drive. You don't need to play games off the disc. So they could get away with doing that. And that helps them simplify the process, where they're only making one type of PlayStation 5 instead of two. Obviously, a lot of shared parts between them. There was someone out there that had cracked open a bunch of PS5s, and I guess it found a way to flash some piece of firmware, some chip inside of it, to basically convince a PlayStation 5 that it was a PlayStation 5 without a drive instead of with a drive, because the drive had broken and that was preventing it from booting up or something. So there's, like, people doing all kinds of fucking crazy shit with the innards of PS5s these days. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. PlayStation 5 Pro doesn't feel good. That's it. Like it may make logical sense. They may have, like, some numbers on their side that will line up and go like, well, actually, we can hit these performance targets and we can sell it for the same price. What? Maybe, who knows? But does not feel good coming out of the mouth. Doesn't feel right. It feels wrong. It does not feel like we're at a place in this generation. But again, the factors that are contributing to that are so fucking weird and all over the place that I just don't know that it'll ever feel right this time around, because of how strange this generation has been. I don't know. That probably means it's going to happen. And then we'll have to wonder if Xbox will make something else. They have said that they are not. They have gotten out there and said, no, we are not working on a half-step upgrade type of console. And that the console we have now is already so powerful that it is our step, which is like, it's fun to say, but like Xbox Series X is pretty much on par with a PlayStation 5. So if the PlayStation 5 is a more powerful device, then what? It might not make sense for Microsoft to make a more powerful console. Like from a numbers perspective, it might just not make sense for them to do it. It might just cost them too much. They might just not want to spend that money. If they're really, and coming off all the paperwork and all these lawsuits about how Microsoft, the Xbox is so in last place and how it's, it's so yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Xbox fan base would not show up for an upgraded Xbox if that's their mentality. Like maybe they, it's a fight that they're losing and they seem willing to lose on that front, I guess. If third parties push for it, then they would do it. But I don't know. It depends. Like if this PlayStation 5 Pro comes out and it is like dramatically more powerful in a way that you see a more interesting gap between the devices, then maybe they are forced to move, or maybe they say, maybe at that point they say, you should get a PC. Hey, you should get a PC. That's not something they can tell to third parties, though. Though the vast majority of the third-party software on Xbox is on PC, right? I'm trying to think of like Xbox games that are not on PC. Probably who knows? It's a bizarre business. And it's just getting weirder. Speaking of Xbox, Final Fantasy 14 is coming to the Xbox. Phil Spencer hopped up on stage. He rushed the stage at the Final Fantasy 14 Fan Fest in Vegas. And the game will be out in spring. There will be an open beta ahead of that. Official launch. And yeah, that's gonna finally happen. I'm going to play Final Fantasy 14 one of these days, so there's that. I did play a little bit of it, but yeah, I don't know. Now is not the time. That's not me saying I'm definitely going to play it on Xbox, because I don't want to play an MMO on consoles. It's cool that you can, but I don't necessarily want to do that. It's a cool little story that Kotaku picked up on here. Remnant 2 came out a little while ago. Seems like it is being very well received. They just said that they have broken 1 million copies sold. And so on and so forth. There is a hidden class in the game that it seems like they put in there for data miners to find. Not necessarily something that you would find in game, but they put a class in there that, the process of unlocking it is something that is only, and this process seems ridiculous here. And they kind of alluded to this secret being in there. And the one of the designers of the game, Ben Curtin, said, "We knew we couldn't stop data mining, so we leaned into it and created an entire archetype," which is basically a class, that could be shared with the community once revealed by those with the ability to see between worlds. Okay. And so people data mined out a hidden class, which is, I think, a really cool idea. And now that information is out there, and so they have here's the list. And as someone who has not played much Remnant 2, This all seems like a lot of gibberish, but here's what you need to do. Level up the Invader archetype to 5 with the Wormhole skill activated. Level the Explorer archetype to 10 with the Fortune Hunter skill activated. Equip Leto's Amulet. Equip Amber Moonstone Ring. Equip Anastasia's Inspiration Ring. Equip Zanya's Malice Ring. Equip the Black Cat Band Ring. Wear the Realm Walker Armor. Equip Ford's Scattergun Primary. Equip the Cube Gun Secondary. Equip the Labyrinth Staff Melee Weapon. Equip the Void Heart Relic. Once you've done all that, you head to the corrupted door found in the labyrinth, and there you'll discover a strange box in the back rooms. And once you open that strange box, it will unlock the Archon class. That's cool. That's one of, it's fun to have stuff that just like spreads through a community like that. And I would assume that that's something that maybe they just, they give people their early time with it here for a handful of months, and then they're like, hey, we patched it, and now that thing's just there. Or you don't need to wear all that shit. Just go find the box and open it. I don't know. Yeah, this is a lot of rings. Do you have to equip them all at once? I don't know. But also leveling one character to 5, or one archetype to 5 and another to 10, and then having all of this gear seems like it's okay. So yeah, Bryn in the chat says some of this is stuff you get for beating the game. So okay. So you'll still have to put in a lot of time. This isn't something where you're just like, okay, let's fire up the game and do it. You'll have to get all that gear first. So that's cool. I think that's really neat. I don't know. And that's unless something else happened over the last couple of hours, that's it for the news. Yeah, that looks like that's it for the news. It's weird to have multiple stories about upcoming hardware. I don't feel like I'm ready to have all those conversations again, But again, I think a lot of that is because of just the weird run these existing consoles have had so far. It's felt really strange to me this time around. But here we go. It only picks up from here. Why don't we get into some emails here? podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send in your emails to me, and I will look at them. That's what I'll do. Like Nikki from Grand Haven, Michigan, who writes in and says, I remember you talking about going back and forth on owning arcade cabinets over the years. And I was curious how much of a diehard you are for arcades to always be rocking a CRT display instead of a flat panel. Moreover, when playing 8 and 16-bit home console games, do you indulge in any scanline filters or ever play them on a tube to recreate the same look? I am one of those crazies with like 5 tubes in his house, so I thought I would ask if I should be locked up. I think if you're going to get arcade cabinets, I think if you're going to have an arcade cabinet, and this is harder to do all the time because it's, just supply is what it is. But I think if you're going to get an arcade cabinet, it should have a CRT in it. If you can't get one, and the only way for you to use it is to replace it with a flat panel, then you got to do what you got to do. But that is the one case where I go like, man, try to stick with the because like otherwise, I guess I look at it as like once you've crossed that bridge, once you're like, hey, I'm just going to put a flat panel in this. Then you're like, I don't know. You're like, oh, I'm just going to build my own MAME cabinet and do that. Why have any of it at that point? And the answer is because, sometimes you have an arcade cabinet and the tube dies and you're like, well, I still want to be able to use this. So I guess I'm going to have to get a flat panel and maybe see if this tube can be repaired or replaced. But in the meantime, I'm going to throw this LCD screen in it or whatever else. But like, yeah, I think if you're, if you're gonna go, then go. If you're gonna get an arcade cabinet, get a fucking arcade cabinet. Which again, it's easier said than done because obviously, no one is making new CRTs. So as those tubes, as those things die in your arcade cabinet, it becomes harder and harder to find replacements and all of that other stuff. As far as console games, no, I don't, scanline filters and all that stuff. I'm not really into it. I'm usually fine just looking at the raw image. And I get it, some people have like, oh, well, you look at these graphics and like Super Mario RPG is a really good example. Ridge Racer Type 4 is a really interesting example also. I was playing that because that is available to play on a PlayStation 5. You can download that game and play it. And so I did that. And then I remembered like, oh, right. All the text and everything in this game looks like total shit without scan lines, without, like at any kind of up-resed anything. Like it's just the fonts they chose. A lot of that stuff is just a blocky, weird mess. It is literally difficult to read. Which is a shame because I think the menus and the design on those menus is amazing. Like Ridge Racer R4 is an incredible piece of visual design, but you don't always get that impression when you are playing it in a modern context because without those scan lines, like a lot of that stuff just looks like shit. And same with Super Mario RPG and some of the Donkey Kong Country, or like people look at like, oh, look at Dracula and Symphony of the Night and whatever else. And yeah, sometimes that stuff, you see when it's running with some scan lines or running on a regular TV, you go like, oh, okay, I guess like they designed it to have those scan lines because they knew what they were, what TVs they were working with when they made that art in the first place. And so it was never meant to be seen in a purely raw format and blah, 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 blah. It's rarely something that I mind. And so I don't really get too into the whole fake scan line thing. Sometimes I've started to toy with it here and there. But yeah, it's not something I spend a ton of. Like that technology is getting better all the time. Shaders for scanline filters and slot masks and all this other crazy stuff. You can do pretty good with it. But yeah, I don't know. I have a CRT out in the garage. It is a big widescreen Sony, big old TV, weighs 1 trillion pounds, and it'll play 720p and it'll play 1080i. It was like kind of my PS2 and Xbox television before all the TVs were flat. And I hooked my Mister up to that at one point, and I was playing some games on that, and I was like, this is neat. But it was just neat, like I think the convenience of modern televisions and their flatness is great. And so I did not move that TV in here so I could use it for games. Sometimes I think about getting a PVM or something and just having a little, like a good little 4x3 tube TV that I can just have. It's not huge, but it's big enough that I can, play games on it or whatever. I think that would be neat. But I don't need it. I don't need it. It'd be neat. But, Michael in Wales writes and says, do you think Nintendo could potentially have a similar issue with marketing their next console like they did going from the Wii to the Wii U? I suppose the issue last time was the name, so hopefully they literally just stick a fat 2 on the next Switch, like Nintendo Switch 2, the new one. Yes, the new Nintendo console. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's become this big anecdote, right? Like, I don't know if there's any hard science of like customer sentiment behind it, but there's a ton of credence paid to the idea that by naming it the Wii U, it was very confusing to people, and that people thought it was an add-on for the existing Wii that they didn't need or whatever, or blah blah blah. Like, I don't know how much of a factor that actually played, because they could have marketed it as like, here's the new console, and I'm sure they did. But yeah, it's how much that market confusion contributed to the Wii U sales story, who knows, right? Did it have an effect? Probably some, but is that the sole reason why the Wii U is looked at now as a failure? Probably not. I think there were other headwinds they were facing at the time that didn't do them any favors. So I think it's probably very tempting, especially for ex-Nintendo people, to try to look at that and go like, well, the name was all wrong. But the story is a lot deeper than that, I think. As far as putting out a new console, and if it looks similar, I think, yeah, you slap a number on it. I think that works. If they wanted to call it the Super Switch, that might be cool too. I think that would be fun if they called it that. But like, look at where Apple got to with it. Apple spent a long time numbering their things. Here's the iPhone 3G, here's the iPhone 4, here's the iPhone, they still do. Here's the iPhone, the 14 is this year's, or is it? It's 15. It's 15 this year. But then on the iPad, they kind of did away with a lot of that. They said, oh, we're just going to call it the new iPad, or we're going to call it the iPad mini, and then a new one's going to come out, and what are you going to call that? The iPad mini. And it doesn't necessarily cause the same level of confusion. I am often confused by the iPad lines, because you don't know when they updated them last, because they don't update them on an annual cadence the way they do with phones, that sometimes you're like, is this iPad new, or is this like a 3-year-old iPad that they just haven't updated in a while, or whatever? I don't know. Maybe they're not doing themselves any favors in that department either. But I would be curious to, if they were issuing Switches more frequently, then they would probably just call it the Switch and just keep calling it the Switch. But like that, yeah, the Apple stuff is weird because you end up in a situation where, like, especially if you're buying accessories, and you're like, I have an iPad here. I have an iPad Pro. I do. I have an iPad Pro somewhere. And if I had to buy a case for it or a cover, I would have no fucking idea. Like, the thing they do, the thing that Apple does that is actually pretty smart, is when you open up the Apple Store app on your phone or tablet, it says, here's stuff that works with your device. The ones that are currently working on your account right now. Here's something that works with the iPad you are looking at this on. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Because otherwise, if you go on Amazon, or you're looking somewhere else for fucking parts for it, or not parts, but accessories or whatever, it's like, okay, this is an iPad Pro. What year is it? Was it, there's like this, and MacBooks are in the same boat sometimes, where it's like, do you have a mid 2021 MacBook Mini? And I'm like, or MacBook Air, or whatever it is. I'm like, mid 2021. What the? You shouldn't have to go digging into the settings to figure out what the fuck you have. Nintendo has never been that bad. The Wii U was never as bad as Apple's iPad stuff has been. But I don't really know. I think you call it the Switch 2 and just be done with it. Unless there's some other hook with it, which is the problem they ran into with the Wii U, I guess, is they're like, well, no, it's more than just a Wii, If there's some other hook with that hardware that, you know, dictates them having a different name, then I would go with Switch 2, even over Super Switch. As much as I think there's a good nostalgic reason to call it the Super Switch, I think if you just call it the Switch 2, people will know what it is. People will understand. Because you will look at the Switches that they have in stock, and then you will say, this is the Switch 2. You go, okay. Those are not Switch 2s, so... And they're not Switch 3s, so they must be Switch 1s. I think that would work just fine. I also think that, you know, it depends on how good they're doing with inventory. Like, will they have a lot of situations where they have multiple Switches on shelves, or will they do a good job of selling out of most of their OLED Switches right around the time the Switch 2 comes out, so that they're not competing with themselves on the on shelves, you know? But I don't know. I don't know what other names you could go with, but I think, you know, you just have to convey that, this thing is the new one. And so a 2 does that. A 2 does that just fine. Does Switch 2 mean anything? No, but like, who cares? It's one more than the other one. And that will work. In the same way that, again, you know, that iPhones have been using for years now. Just slap the fucking number on it. Super Switch also abbreviates to SS, which I think you kind of maybe don't necessarily want to do that. But yeah, I think you throw a 2 on it. Because unless there's something about the form factor that is changing dramatically, you know, you don't just rename it to something else. You know, you maintain the Switch name because the Switch name has heat on it. When you go into stores, I think that there's, you know, the precedent for like, this has a higher number on it, I think is well done across so many other parts of technology, meaning phones. You know, Google does it with Pixels and whatever else, that I think it's very easy for people to walk into a store and be like, oh, the Switch 2. But also, I think by and large, the initial people buying a Switch 2 will know exactly what it is that they're looking for and what they're getting and why. The early adopters will drive that conversation. That's why I think that the conversation about the Wii to Wii U thing is not some major problem. Did it happen? Yes, probably. But early adopters know what a Wii U was, and if they got it and loved it, they would talk it up in a way that would kind of overcome a lot of that stuff. But the Wii U was never going to be, you know, probably never going to be as big a hit as the original Wii was, because they just didn't have the same hooks. They didn't have the same games. It was a very different kind of concept that was not as, I don't think it was as family friendly as the Wii was. And so I think the design of the Wii U is the Wii U's real problem. The name of it didn't help, but like, by and large, you just didn't. The scenario of like big Wii fans going in the store and being like, what is that? Do I need to get this or no? Like, the answer is you don't. If you're just like some Wii bowling dude who's just like, I love the Wii bowling. Can I get more of the Wii bowling? You don't want a fucking Wii U. I don't care what they fucking call it. They could have named that thing anything. Those people don't want a fucking Wii U. It was never going to be some hundreds of millions selling console. It was never going to be that, you know? So it's, I don't know. Again, like trying to lay the failure of the Wii U at the feet of its name alone is, I think not. I think that's deceptive at best. Grant from Niagara Falls writes in, I was out at a club in downtown LA this past weekend where my friend attempted to order a vodka Red Bull. He was informed that the club no longer carries Red Bull and exclusively carries Ghost Energy. The bartender said that sales have never been higher since they changed over, and they will never be carrying Red Bull again. What are the implications of this move? Personally, I do enjoy the majority of the flavors of Ghost, but it is not a valid substitute for a Red Bull when you add it to vodka. For reference, the two flavors they had were orange creamsicle and tropical mango. Yeah, man. I agree. I think that I think that orange creamsicle and tropical mango would probably mix with vodka incredibly well. No issues there. But when you want a vodka Red Bull, you need a vodka Red Bull. And that's not a vodka Red Bull. It's it's an energy drink with vodka in it. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, that's just like the Ghost Energy rep came in and sold this bar on it, and it's working out great. So I'm not, I'm sure that that's a competitive space. But I like Red Bull. I don't know. I almost bought a Red Bull yesterday because it had just been a long time since I had a proper Red Bull. I was like, I could go for a Red Bull, but I ended up not going for one. I wonder how Red Bull as a brand is doing these days, because I feel like they rolled out all their flavored Red Bulls. I think a lot of those are really shitty. And I like regular Red Bull, but I have not bought one in ages. So I just wonder, how is Red Bull doing these days in the face of all this weird competition from all the 1,000 different brands that are out there? Maybe it's different worldwide. Like Ghost probably isn't selling around the world the way Red Bull is. An anonymous emailer writes in and says, in a recent podcast, you talked about how the ESA was pushing for a facial recognition standard to help validate whether or not a user was an adult. Within the past week, I saw this technology being implemented on my favorite pornograph site. In the past, the site simply required users to click, yes, I'm an adult, but not anymore. We know the adult industry has really been the key decision maker in which standard wins out. Could this be the same here? Of course, I immediately closed the site when they asked to validate my face and found another site for my pornography needs. So perhaps this won't work out after all. Yeah, I agree. I think that like if especially in a porn context, I think if a porn site is saying, let's take a look at your face, people are gonna be like, fuck you, what? No, what? Absolutely not. Maybe if you're paying for it already and then then you've got a credit card or something, then maybe you're already, I don't know. But I feel like that would lead to, there's no shortage of pornography on the internet. Stop me if you maybe you're aware of that, but, this doesn't seem like something that will stick in that context. So I don't know. Some people in chat are saying that some states are requiring it at the state level. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's fucking crazy. I get the idea that like, hey, you don't want minors to access porn sites. Are minors looking at legit porn sites? Are minors looking at sites that require sign up and like there's so, this seems like one of those laws that just like only hampers people that are trying to run a legit porno business. But like there's so much other stuff out there all the time anyway that like, why would you ever visit a legit porno business? I'm not, hey, if hey, sometimes you need it a certain way and you got to pay to get it up. It's, I wish everyone the best, especially the people in that line of work. I know it's been fucking crazy since the internet completely blew it up. But yeah, I don't know. That seems, bad. Seems like a bad way to go. I don't really know. Yeah, the ESA thing, I saw some additional discussion of the facial recognition stuff, and basically the complaint around what they're proposing Because if you remember, as we talked about this last week, so the idea is that this is not for like buying games. This is not the ESRB saying like, are you going to buy an M-rated game? Show me your face. This is specifically for when kids sign up for websites, when kids sign up for a Roblox account, when kids sign up for a service somewhere, and it needs to notify a parent that the kid has done this. What they want to do on the parent end is have it so you can just hold up the phone to your face and it'll say, that looks like an adult face. Okay. Whereas right now what they're doing is there's like 4 other ways that they try to verify, yes, you are an adult. So they're basically trying to make that easier. Now, of course, when you make that easier, what you are really enabling is parents just rubber stamping a process without looking into it and doing their due diligence. They're just like, oh, whatever. And then this makes it theoretically easier for all of these companies to collect customer data from kids under the age of 13. And that collecting data from kids under the age of 13 is the actual problem here. And that enabling that to happen more smoothly and easily for a lot of these companies is the actual problem. And yeah, that doesn't seem great. That does not seem great. But yeah, I feel bad for you and your pornography needs. I don't know. I don't know, man. The internet is vast. Jake from Texas writes in and says, I was wondering why you don't like Quan Chi from Mortal Kombat. I think he's a cool villain with a cool design. I mean, he's got green fireballs. He enslaved Liu Kang. What's not to love? Quan Chi is like is some bullshit right-hand man conniving fucko that he's not a proper villain. He's just some fucking dude he is willing to work for Shang Tsung. He is willing to work for Shao. He'll work for anybody. As long as he gets to fucking drink a nice cold one on Friday, Quan Chi will fucking do whatever. And so I think Quan Chi, I thought that, you know, when Quan Chi debuted in Mortal Kombat 4 as a playable character, I thought he was shitty. That's where all of this comes from, is I think he was shitty as a fighting game character. Like a lot of the characters that were in Mortal Kombat 4. Yeah. So a lot of it originates there, but as far as, hey, man, Rich DeVizio playing Quan Chi, Mortal Kombat Mythologies, Sub-Zero, that's classic. That's a classic portrayal. It's amazing. It is some amazing FMV. And so I love Quan Chi in that specific context. I love Rich DeVizio drinking a cold one. By cold one, I think I mean a cold Pepsi, right? And all of that. But I think that, like, as a character, Quan Chi has just often been like the secondary villain. He's just showing up to convey someone else's message, and then he's up to his own. He's playing both sides, blah blah blah, and it's just like, I don't know. He never really had a lot of depth beyond that. I think is probably my real problem with Quan Chi as a character. So yeah, Grant wrote in with this. We were talking about this earlier. I've bought into every generation prior to this one straight away, but this one just feels like it hasn't gotten started yet. 3 years in now, is the problem me, or has there been no bangers yet? I'm still playing everything on my PS4, and when I look at side-by-side comparisons of their exclusives, I can barely see any improvements graphically. I just feel bored of gaming and still have no desire to buy a PS5, and not making the VR backwards compatible killed any chance of me upgrading. Though on a side note, I'm also bored of Sony's exclusives now and wish they did something new from the format they established at the end of the PS3's life. Not getting Call of Duty could have been the best thing that ever happened if Sony had to invest in a first-person shooter of their own. It feels like corporate Sony have taken over from the more friendly one they probably faked on us to market the PS4. Harsh words from Grant. Yeah, hey, look, I think that PS4... I think that PS4 stuff runs acceptably well in a lot of cases. I don't know that I would say I can't see the difference. But yeah, you know, we had a good long run of games coming out on both platforms, and that's something that is still happening here and there. It is happening less so, especially I think with the first party stuff that is, you know, mostly tapering off now. But yeah, you know, all these cross-gen bundles and whatever else, like that stuff still runs mostly okay on those consoles. So yeah, you don't necessarily need to run out and spend $500 on a PlayStation 5 to continue to play games. That's going to change, you know, over the next little bit here, because, you know, and it has started to change, right? There's fewer PS4 games coming out all the time, but there are still a lot of PS4 games coming out, and backwards compatibility has kind of enabled that for a class of games that don't necessarily need to spend a bunch of time spitting out a PS5 version when they can just spit out a PS4 version. I think you see this a little bit more on Xbox. You know, because of the compatibility situation there, that like all that stuff just goes into the same game library and you just download it and it runs regardless of if you have a PS4 or a PS5 or an Xbox One or an Xbox Series X, right? So yeah, Street Fighter 6 came out on PS4. It's crazy. Mortal Kombat is next gen only, right? That's next gen. Current gen only. Right? I feel like I need to look that up now. I believe that's the case, but okay, no, it is, yeah, that is only going to new consoles and the Switch, which will be interesting. Also, if they're doing the work to put that on Switch, it really seems like that some of that work could be used to put it out on PS4, considering what they'll need to do to the assets to get it to run on a PS4. But hey, I just, you know, listen, everyone's going to be different, Grant. I think when you say that you are tired of Sony's exclusives, their first party stuff, yeah, I tend to agree in a lot of cases. You know, we were talking about Ratchet, though. I think Ratchet is a fantastic game. But I'm with you, you know, like Horizon hasn't really, you know, like the first Horizon game I thought was incredible, and I thought that I kind of wish they didn't make a sequel. You know, I'm not a big God of War guy. I'm not a big Naughty Dog guy across the board. Yeah, the Sony franchises that I fell in love with across the PlayStation and PlayStation 2, you know, all that stuff's gone. With the exception of Ratchet. And that might, shit, man. Is Ratchet the only franchise they have left? Well, I guess God of War. But God of War feels a little different because they're, you know, they're rebooting it or whatever. But like, yeah, I mean, you know, Sony has changed its attitude. Sony is a different company than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, I get weird messages from people going like, why does Sony still front like they're a Japanese company when they're definitely not? It's like, well, they are. They're just a Japanese company that is like, this division is being led out of the UK. Like Jim Ryan is running this company out of Europe. Like, and they centralized worldwide around Europe. They didn't centralize around the US. If Jack Tretton had stayed on and not left, I wonder if they would have centralized in the US. Because remember, like Sean Layden was at the helm in the US when they did all this stuff. So, and then, you know, he was not there not long after that, right? So that's the sort of situation you look at and go like, oh, well, when Sean Layden was suddenly no longer able to run the US on his own, was he like, this job sucks, I'm fucking getting out of here, fuck this, you know? Like, it's just like those sorts of scenarios. Yeah, I don't know. Like the centralization of worldwide companies in Europe or in the UK, Sega kind of did the same thing in some situations. They're not fully, but a lot of the for a while there, all of the Sega PR stuff was coming out of the UK. And we were like, it felt like they were moving away from the US in terms of offices and whatever else. Now they do have offices. They have a Sonic office down here in Southern California, but there's some other stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's to me, I don't care where the companies run out of. Like that stuff, you maybe see some of that in the way that the company presents itself when they're talking publicly or whatever. But by and large, there is still something of a Japanese arm of Sony. But Japan studio isn't what it was, meaning existing, whatever else. But the changes they made on that front, they just don't have that anymore. And I feel like the PlayStation brand, and I think Xbox is actually in the same boat for a lot of different reasons. We talk about it all the time with like their franchises feel stale or whatever else. I don't think necessarily that Sony's franchises all feel stale. It's more that like the PlayStation brand used to feel surprising and inventive and playful and innovative across the board. Innovative in a ton of different ways. And now they're highly innovative, like, the PlayStation 5, the choices they made around that hardware. I think that they made some very innovative choices. I'm not saying that like they're stale across the board. I think that like they've found a good formula. They have designed their consoles in ways to improve games in that formula of just like, okay, we want ray tracing here. We want this, we want that. The bits and pieces that they put together were to help make their games better, kind of the same as Nintendo does, but in a much, safer way. And so those are the games that drive their business. So they make sure that they make consoles that can make those games so that they can keep driving their business. I look at it that way, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just like, hey, I miss the weird shit. Like The Last Guy. Everyone talks about Tokyo Jungle, and yeah, dude, Tokyo Jungle is fucking nuts. Vib Ribbon. Like, there's just not a lot of... They don't have as much weird shit anymore. And that's something the industry has gotten away from. At a AAA, at a high budget, as a console manufacturer level, a lot of the games being made by major studios have to be safe because they're spending so much goddamn money on them. That they're like, all right, this game has to appeal to the widest variety of people possible. So it can't be weird shit. Indie developers are making weirder shit every day. Weirder shit than the fucking PlayStation ever had. You fucking dig around itch, dig around Steam sometimes. Like there's all kinds of, there's so many games coming out. There's so much innovation. There's so much fresh takes and fun ideas coming out of all these other things. But the big companies just aren't doing it the way that they used to. The big companies are becoming even more blockbuster focused. By and large, there's still some good, Hi-Fi Rush came out, Pentiment came out, like, Microsoft took some fun little chances around some smaller games, which is neat. But yeah, I don't know. There's definitely like that middle tier of games got gutted out of the industry. Indie games have gotten bigger in ways that sometimes fill those gaps. But, like look at Activision. That's a studio. That's a publisher that used to publish 24 games a year. And they're like, fuck it. We got a Spider-Man game. Now we got this shooter. Now we got this. And now you look at them and they're like, we got, we put out Diablo. We put out this Crash game. Like, yeah, we're not just putting out one game, but like you just associate us with Call of Duty and that's it now. We have a fucking fuck ton of people working on those. And Ubisoft didn't do that. And Ubisoft seems lost, right? I mean, Ubisoft feels like a company that could go any which way. Someone could buy that company tomorrow, or they could turn it around, or they could never turn it around. Like, there's just, Ubisoft is fucking weird. Ubisoft felt like they had a formula, and they were like, we're going to keep doing this. And they did. And then people must have eventually said, this is not viable. Whether it's to make these games or to buy these games, something happened there in the middle around Ghost Recon Breakpoint or something, where they were like, fuck, I don't know if people want these games anymore. Yeah, it's real weird. It's real weird. But I don't know. It's tempting to always want to like really like wax poetic and really like hold this nostalgia for like the early PS1 days and the PS2 days. But really, the thing that changed is when the PS1 was coming out and when the PS2 was out, and this lessened over time, games were made for regions. Games came out in Japan and they didn't come out in the US. Games came out in Japan and they took 8 months to be localized into English and come out in the States. You know, you had games that you would import games and just be like, this is so unlike anything that is being published in the US. It's such a quirky, charming, weird thing. And they're just no one's making games like this over here. And we'll look at it. But like, as the industry kind of grew, a lot of that production just became, I don't know, homogenized, whatever. But, you know, like, people are making games for worldwide audiences, and that's impacted Japanese development as well as US development. And that's industry wide. That's, you know, when we talk about Japanese game development, PlayStation probably becomes a much bigger part of that conversation, because a lot of those games are just not coming out on Xbox. So, you know, it's something that probably impacts the PlayStation more than most. But, you know, Babylon's Fall. You know, look at that example of like, hey, we're going to try to make this, and it's this kind of character action game. It's not awesome, and we're going to make this, and also we're going to make it a live service game, and we're going to put Battle Pass in it. We're going to do all this different stuff. And you saw, you know, here's a Japanese studio doing all of this live game stuff in a way that, you know, that a lot of Japanese games didn't do. You're like, what the fuck? And it was a dismal failure. So you know, but I think that's the thing that happened. The thing that happened is, hey, people are making games for worldwide audiences now. Exoprimal didn't come out and be like, well, we're going to put this out in Japan first, because that's we made it here and this is where it's going. This is, hey, we're making this game, and we're making it for a worldwide audience. And so now that games are being made for that worldwide audience, I think you know, a lot of the rough edges get smoothed off. A lot of the appeal, the weird regional appeal that sometimes worms its way into some games, you just see a little bit less of it. A little bit less, not none. I'm not, you know, like, you can, yeah, I don't know. You can do that. Well, yeah. I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say here, but I guess, like, I would say that approach to making games for a worldwide audience is sometimes, not all the time, less fun. Comes across as less weird. And weird is always a really reductive thing to say, you know. It's like, all those weird Japanese games. Like, it's not, you know, they're not necessarily weird. They're just made for a different audience. And now, like, that audience is a worldwide audience. And, you know, look at how big anime is here now. Like, a lot of that stuff is unified in across the board, really, you know. But, you know, a lot of that stuff just kind of gets made for a worldwide audience, and that has its positives from a business perspective, but also its negatives maybe from a creative one. Nier. automata, if you will, is a really good example. And you know, we still see like good examples of just some Japanese games that, like, when you play them, they have the vibe, they everything about them feels like a product of where they came from and who made them and all of that, in a way that feels like it bucks a trend. You know what I mean? The Persona games, you know, some of the stuff that Atlas is doing these days feels like they're trying to bridge that gap. Like, Persona became very popular in the States, but like it's still this, you know, and they're trying to find a, like, we live in a world where the Yakuza franchise got big in a way that no one could have ever anticipated. And so what happens to that when they're like, oh man, they like this game in the States? The ways it can go are like, we're going to keep making them the way we make them because we hit upon something and people like it. Or you could take it in a really bad direction. And I'm not saying they're doing this, but you know, if you lean into that worldwide popularity, suddenly you start fucking up the thing that people liked your game for. You know? And I think Yakuza is a really great example of a game that hasn't been doing that. And I think the rise of the Souls games and some of that is a little bit also sort of, you know, those games aren't necessarily quote unquote weird. I mean, the Souls games are fucking weird, but not in the same way we're talking about here. You know, there are a lot of people in the game playing audience that were more willing to meet those types of games halfway. And so it's weird to me now that it sometimes feels like, instead of seeing more games like that, instead of seeing more Japanese developers kind of making bigger games that don't feel like they're homogenizing to Western design tropes, instead those franchises just like they exist as anomalies almost. People are like, oh, the Yakuza games, like, oh, Monster Hunter, they did, you know, like, and it's weird. I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling here. I don't know that I have a really like a poignant thing here at the end to hit upon here, but I guess, like, yeah, like, you know, yes, that's a good example. Chad Rat 2 says Dragon's Dogma. Yeah, so like, you know, they're gonna make a sequel to Dragon's Dogma. That's cool and weird. They could fuck it up somewhere along the way. It looks like they're making a game that is true to what that first game is, which is good. I wonder if Exoprimal would have been better if it had been like, you know, a little less live servicey, a little less hey, check out this battle pass, hey, check out all of this live game stuff. I wonder, you know, if there's a better game somewhere there. But because they were trying to make something like that, they, you know, had to do what they had to do and made a thing that was like, this is fucking, this bad. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting time for, I think, a lot of culture right now. You know, we talk about games, but you know, like the anime streaming services and their wider availability than they would have had 10 or 15 years ago, and you know, just the weird land grab when every streaming service was trying to get into anime, and they fucked a lot of it up along the way. But you know, like that became something that they were trying to get in on. And then suddenly you had the, like, here's the Western made live action version of this thing. And whoops, everyone fucking hates it. It's like, oh, it's because it's garbage, you dumbass. You know, it's been interesting watching all that stuff happen. But I don't know, man. It's a weird space these days. And I think that, you know, the pandemic and what it did to game development and everything else has caused a lot of weird issues that it's hard to look at anything that's happening right now and go, that's a trend. This is where it's going. Like, it's really hard to look at a lot of stuff right now and say, this is where it's going, because it feels like so much shit is just still sorting itself out. I definitely feel that way about like the media business, you know, like it's a fucking brutal out there. You know, there are no jobs. If you want to write about games, fucking go do anything else. I think it will come back around again. But like the media business is complete, you know, the journalism, reporting, like all of that whole thing is super fucked right now. And I think, you know, I think it's still got quite a lot of, you know, there's probably more jobs to lose in that space than there are to gain. I don't think that stuff's bottomed out personally. But I think we get to a point where, you know, well, yeah, I think it's we're at a really crummy point in that cycle right now. Really crummy point in that cycle right now where, yeah, you got a lot of marketing people, you got a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of just, fans decided they wanted some of their information direct from the publishers themselves and whatever else. And there's a lot of fucking weird shit happened. And then, you know, the AI stuff's going to get in there and fuck up even more shit. But I don't think that stuff works. I don't think that stuff will last. I think that eventually, well, I don't know. I think the whole, you know, you could argue that the entire internet has to implode from a business perspective before it starts to dig its way out. You know, Google is going to fuck up search even more because search is getting worse and worse and worse. It's getting harder and harder to find the things you're looking for online because so many ads are getting interjected. So many algorithms are being, shoved in front of you when you look for stuff. And it used to be like almost an art to it where you're like, I'm really good at searching for stuff online. Some people are really bad at it. It's weird, but I just know what to type and I know how to type it and I know how to speak the search engine's language to get the results I'm looking for. And here's where you put the quotes and here's where you do this. Like those results are getting fucking super bad too. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think there's going to have to be a big reckoning. And I think that, you know, from a sick accelerationist perspective, AI is going to be the thing that kind of eventually causes that reckoning because it's going to cause it all to turn in on itself. And when no new information is being generated and AI is just there to generate the new information itself, it will eat itself alive. And that's not going to go well for information on the internet. I don't know. Feels bad to have an election coming up in the middle of, as this stuff is really, as like the things that you look at as kind of like the base pillars of things on the internet that are used to convey information in a truthful and logical way, as more and more of that stuff gets worn away and you're like, oh, we got 2 years to fucking figure this shit out or else, woo! It's going to be, yeah, the next few years are going to be real fucked up. Real fucked up. Matt in Chiba writes in and says, I picked up a used fat PS2 at my local Hard Off. Yeah. Fuck yeah, Hard Off. And decided to give it a good clean inside since it smelled a bit bad when starting it up. Lo and behold, a fossilized little cockroach from decades of yore and some form of dried up residue awaited inside. The machine is clean now, but still feels filthy in a way that will probably never go away. Would you keep something like this or throw it away? And do you have any stories of insect infestations in video game consoles to share? I hope not. None that I know of. I got to open up some hardware for sure, but it sounds like you had one cockroach come out and some dried up residue, which sounds bad. Even one cockroach is bad, but when you hear these stories about like, oh, it was full of dead ants or full of dead this, or it's like, ugh, yeah. I have never had to deal with that scenario. That said, I was out in the garage yesterday and I realized I've got like 5 Xbox debug kits and like 3 or 4 like original Xbox. You know, I got like 3 or 4 retail Xboxes. And I have not opened up any of them to cut the clock capacitors out of them. Which those things leak over time and you know, eventually are bad. You need to cut those out of them before they destroy your Xbox. And I was like, man, I got to open up all these Xboxes one of these days and cut all these caps out. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, oh man, what if I open up these Xboxes and it's full of nightmares? What if when I crack open these Xboxes, it's full of a disaster? And I got all scared. So I don't know. I have never had to deal with one of those, but that doesn't mean I don't have one. It's entirely possible. But they were usually it was a case where they were attracted to the heat of the consoles. And so I don't know. I had a lot of consoles just out in the garage for a long time and they were not plugged in or turned on or anything. So hopefully that wouldn't attract anything. Ugh. The only problem I had out in that garage, not this garage, the garage I was in before, is that there was a while that there was a rat problem. And so when I was cleaning things up, I got to a couple of boxes where it was like, oh, this has a hole chewed in the side. Oh, this is full of rat poop. Fuck, this Pokemon Center Game Boy I brought back from Japan was in a box covered in rat feces. What am I going to do with that? Is that ever going to feel clean again? Ugh. Matt writes in and says, I'm sure you remember the plastic inserts for Intellivision controllers. Were there any early cool gaming tech features that you were fond of? Also, not sure if you had the Intellivision, but did you ever lose or damage one of the plastic inserts? Having to memorize the numbers on the pad kind of sucked. Yeah, those things were terrible. I have one because the Jaguar, you know, the forward-thinking, if you do the math, the forward-thinking Atari Jaguar decided to duplicate the controller insert thing that the Intellivision did. And so they had inserts as well. This is one for Wolfenstein that I'm holding up here. These suck. These are terrible. But yeah, I don't know, early cool gaming tech features you were fond of. You know, it's not necessarily a gaming tech feature, but I remember when I first heard about them, I was obsessed with the idea of like the barcode battler. The idea that you could just take any barcode off of any product in your house and scan it, it would make a monster. Like that seemed like the coolest fucking thing in the world. And I could never get one back then. I never had one. But I loved the idea. It was so cool. That's the only one I can immediately think of. Let's see here. Drew writes in and says, your discussion about the ESA this week was interesting to me. I interned for them in 2006, thinking it would get me closer to the industry. Maybe it did, hard to say. A big part of their focus at the time was anti-piracy. My job was to crawl Craigslist to find Xbox modders or cracked hardware and report it. Ironically, I was able to borrow seized pirated hardware and games, so I could play pretty much anything. I wrote a bot to scrape Craigslist and dump it to a spreadsheet, and then spent the rest of my time playing Chrono Trigger on a hacked PSP using a SNES emulator, which was ironic. The highlight was attending a congressional hearing where politicians grilled the ESA about why they weren't protecting the children from game mods like Hot Coffee and the nude mod for Skyrim. They couldn't grasp that mods were user-generated. It was all total bullshit, though eye-opening to see the legal arm of the industry. To your point, I have no clue why they need to exist at this point, except maybe to be the punching bag for politicians when they need an easy target. Yeah. The idea that like a person working in an anti-piracy capacity was just like that they could just hang out with all the seized fucking hardware and shit is really fucking wild. That's fucking hilarious. Sazy writes in and says, will they ever make a new General Chaos? That'd be cool if they did. No, I don't think they're going to. But I love General Chaos. Ryan from Wilmette, Illinois writes in and says, on a recent podcast, you talked about how jarring it is to see smoking in a video game, as smoking in America is way down. I don't know if it's way down. You know, I think a lot of, when the kids got off the vape, maybe they got back onto cigarettes. I don't really know where cigarettes are at these days. It feels like you don't see it in media as much. I've been playing the Yakuza series and everyone is smoking all the time. In your experience, how different is smoking culture in Japan? Well, you know, my experience is years out of date at this point, so I don't know what it's like these days. But, yeah, every time you went to arcades, people were smoking in arcades. You know, the people, you're sitting down at these candy cabs, and they all have ashtrays just sitting there on them, and people are just chain smoking inside this arcade all the time. It was fucking crazy. Yeah, it was just fucking wild to see. It was just like, geez, this is as crazy as I thought it would, as I heard it was. Yeah, and so yeah, that was always, it was weird seeing ashtrays sitting on arcade machines. You know, these days. Neil in Arizona says, what do you think the chances are in the next decade that we see Microsoft release at least one game exclusively to Game Pass, as in not available to purchase individually? Now, 10 years is a long time. I'm going to say by 2033, yeah, they'll try it. Sure. But I think if they were going to do this, have a game that you couldn't purchase outright and have it only be on Game Pass, it would, I mean, you know, Nintendo did this with the, you know, Tetris 99 and some of the other stuff there, right? Like, you can't just buy those games. Those games are temporary and they come and go. Like Pac-Man 99 or whatever. I could see them doing something along the, like if 1 versus 100 were to come back, as everyone seems to think it should. I think that's a limited time event. I think you say, hey, we're bringing back 1 versus 100 on a limited run basis, and we're going to have an 8 episode run this summer, or we're going to, you know, hey, we're going to do a 3-month run here. Then yeah, you don't say buy it for $60. You say it's exclusively for Game Pass members to come play 1 versus 100. I think if you do something that is that type of live event or such a live service that is tied into these sorts of events, I could see them doing something like that. And I think they will try something like that. I'll put it this way. If they were to bring back 1 versus 100, which I'm starting to think is not going to happen, because I think if they were going to do it, they would have done it by now. That it would only make sense as something that you get as part of being a Game Pass subscriber, or potentially a separate subscription, but not something you purchase outright. Because why would you, you know, again, especially if it's something they're looking at as a limited time event-based gaming. You know, I would have thought we would have seen way more of this. I would have thought that HQ, the popularity of HQ trivia seemed like something that was poised to make a lot of change in the video game business, but then it imploded so spectacularly that everyone just treated it as this radioactive concept. And they're just like, fuck this. It's this fickle thing. No, there's no money there. There's nothing there. But I think the idea of like that type of appointment-based thing, like HQ, like 1 versus 100, I thought was incredible. It was an amazing thing. And I think, I guess I'm surprised that we don't see more stuff like that there hasn't been more experimentation around those sorts of games and those sorts of experiences. Here's another one that, you know, might not immediately seem like the same thing, but in my mind it is. UFC, when EA was doing, or maybe this was just the EA Sports MMA game before they had the UFC license. I don't remember exactly which game it was, but EA wanted to do this thing with their MMA game where you would win a belt. You would be the title holder for online. You would be like, I'm the fucking light heavyweight champion of this game, period. And then you go on to defend it in live events where you are playing the game against the number 2 ranked competitor at this time, and that they're doing live commentary. And they've did this a few times. They had people from the dev team or whatever. So you'd be playing the game, or, you know, spectating, really. You'd be spectating a live event where these players are playing the game, and you were getting piped in live commentary instead of the game commentary. Instead of just like recorded Joe Rogan's fucking stupid ass, you would get, you know, people on the dev team doing live commentary. There's a lot of hurdles there where someone fucking, you know, doesn't show up and it ruins the whole event, or, you know, or whatever. But like the idea of like, hey, once a month, we're going to put together a card of fights with the best players online in an esports kind of context. And we're going to have these 8 fights. And we're going to do live commentary over it. So tune in, put in the game, turn it on, and tune in to this event. And we're going to do this live. Like, I think that's fucking cool as shit. I think that's such a fucking awesome idea. It's really hard to do it all in game, right? I mean, to make all of that happen in game. Because, and maybe that's why stuff like that doesn't happen on a wider scale, because people just stream it on Twitch, and, you know, instead the live commentary comes from the live stream and all that other stuff. Dota had some stuff in game for watching esports, but I don't remember if they did commentary there or not. Yeah, that does comment. Okay, so Dota 2 had commentary. Yeah, so I think that's such a fucking neat idea. But at the end of the day, you know, probably the actual reason why you don't see more of that is because for them to hit the viewer numbers that they need to hit, they need to stream it on Twitch and wherever else they can, instead of it being a situation where like, hey, if you own the game, you can watch this. That's a very limited number, and attracting sponsors for those events and whatever else becomes a much harder thing to do. Whereas if you're streaming it on Twitch, you can be like, hey, 80 million, you know, however many hundreds, thousands of people clicked on this over this 3-hour period. That becomes a much easier thing for them to probably sponsor. So maybe that's why that doesn't happen. But I think that conceptually, event-based stuff in games is really neat. It's not for me as a player anymore. And yeah, that's a good point. Boat Time says kind of like Fortnite concerts and stuff. Yeah, totally. Like those aren't necessarily like in-game competitive, like, you know, that's not a gameplay event. That's a marketing thing of you're turning this on and watching a Star Wars ad or whatever. But that's still cool. And when they do that, that's cool. You know, when Destiny was doing that here and there, I'm sure they'll have at least 1 or 2 more of those before the final shape is upon us. But the idea of even just like logging into the game and, you know, not necessarily having like live audio, but like, hey, if you log into the game right now, a ship is fucking crashing and you can watch it happen. Like, that's cool. It's kind of a different thing. Not as big of a live component to it. But I think the idea of putting on a live show that is part game, part live show is fucking cool. It's fucking really cool. The way that UFC I think it was just the MMA game. It was before they had the license. But anyway, that EA thing I thought was a really interesting idea, a really fucking cool idea. And then obviously 1 versus 100 is really neat. HQ was really cool when it was going. Scott Rogowski, I think he's like running like a vintage clothing shop selling baseball memorabilia. Like, he's a baseball man, that guy. I think you can just go see him in Southern. I think I could probably just drive and go see Scott Rogowski working at his shop next to a Sweet Green or something. I don't know. That guy seems cool. That guy seems like he's all right. He's a Tom Sharpling guy. So that guy's okay. This is a nightmare story here. Nathan from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, writes in and says, Garfield was the reason I started drinking coffee at age 8. It's not good. It's already not good. I swear this is true. The first depiction of drinking coffee that seemed super cool to me as an impressionable kid in grade school was Garfield. I shortly after asked my parents if I could drink coffee in the morning, and they had no issue with it. The stock concern of it stunting my growth was the only concern at the time, but hey, I'm now a night owl person and can't maintain a normal sleep schedule, so maybe Garfield messed up my development, and Chuck Schumer is right to trying to protect the kids from this new wave of influencers. Thanks for listening to my story. Yeah, ugh. That's, I don't know, man. I would not let an 8-year-old drink coffee. My son got a hold of some coffee recently by me. It's like kids... You take your eye off them for a sec and you're like, oh, shit. Why does my daughter have a pair of scissors? That's not good. But, I don't know. Canada banned more energy drinks. I think they're looking to take more drinks off the shelves. Prime was one of the ones they were starting with, but I think in Canada they've got labeling laws that some of these drinks like Ghost are apparently not meeting the standard. And so they were looking to take some of those drinks off shelves. So you might not be able to get some of that stuff up there anymore. I don't know if it's a labeling thing or what's going to happen. But it's weird to feel like regulation around energy drinks again. I don't know. It's strange. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Peric says, energy drinks are considered medicinal in Canada, so they need dosages and stuff. I consider them medicinal right here, dog. Yeah, I don't know. Taylor writes in. Says, I randomly got the insane urge to play Guitar Hero again. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, to the point of browsing for PS2s and a copy of Guitar Hero 2. Do you think it's time for a new one, or did the market get so oversaturated that it's still feeling the burnout from those games? What kind of benefits do you think a new one could gain from this current gen's technology? It comes down to plastic instruments on shelves and shelf space. It comes down to like retailer shelf space and how available those instruments are and all that other stuff. And I think that's still a really hard sell. So, Harmonix, I think they're still doing some DLC for Rock Band 4, right? I think they ended. I know that the DJ game, the mashup game they put out, they stopped doing updates for that, but they were not the publisher on that, so that was kind of like whatever. But yeah, Harmonix is they were purchased by Epic, and I assume that means that they had to spend a lot of time on how to do concerts in Fortnite and whatever else. I have a ton of weird business ideas about how like the virtual concert space should be and all of that. Weirdly enough, yes, but yes, between Epic owning Bandcamp and owning Harmonix and a lot of other stuff, there's actually like an interesting connect the dots you could play there and make some really exciting, weird new services. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, what was the name of that fucking Harmonix game? It's not Drop Mix, that's the card game that Hasbro published. The one that Nexon put a Fuser. That's the one. Fuser. God damn it. People are importing custom tracks into Fuser, so if you have a copy of Fuser, you can get your hands. It's the one of the fascinating things about all of this like algorithmic stripping technology, where people are able to kind of separate songs into stems by running them through all these models and algorithms and whatever else. like it's not always awesome qualitatively, but it is usually good enough that you can fucking yank fucking things apart and put these tracks as stems into things like Fuser, or use them for your own fucking hellish mashups. And, you know, like there's a lot of stuff you can do with that that is a lot of fun. It's great that technology has gotten to a point where we can do that, where I can fucking, you know, rip apart the, you know, if I wanted to freestyle over the beat from that Pusha T Arby's commercial, I have that separated into vocal and instrumental tracks somewhere on my desktop here still after all this time. I should really organize my desktop. It's getting bad. But it's great that that stuff exists. Anyway, that stuff is, you know, there's a lot of people that have then integrated a lot of that music into Fuser and making customs for Fuser and customs for Rock Band and everything else. So there's a lot of cool shit happening. None of which is fully legal, but hey, that doesn't mean it's not awesome and cool. But what kind of benefits do I think a new Guitar Hero could gain from this current generation of technology? It's a subscription service. It's a, you know, like the shitty part of it is I think that a lot of it is in how that stuff gets served to users. I think buying individual DLC tracks is cool, but it's fucking expensive. You know, the idea of like, what if I could subscribe to the Rock Band 4 or whatever, I think is really cool. And Guitar Hero Live tried to do that, where they were like, hey, what if we had a live channel you could turn on and just play, and they had to play along to music videos again, and you know, because the technology for stripping these tracks down to stems was not really there yet, and so they couldn't really do anything more interesting than that. But nowadays, I think if you integrated some of that tech, well, you wouldn't integrate that tech unless you were fucking breaking the law, right? So if you had licensed songs, you would generally have access to the stems. But in cases where artists lost the stems or don't have access to the masters or whatever else, like a lot of this technology exists in such a way that, you know, you could do it. It'd be good enough for a fucking Rock Band game, you know, at least. So you'd have that. But I don't know. Yeah, the subscription service. I think a lot of the stuff that Guitar Hero Live tried to do was really smart. In terms of like trying to find a way to make that into a new business model that people might find palatable. You know, but it's tricky. It's very tricky. So yeah, I don't know, like, and I think that's like technology hasn't necessarily advanced that much since they tried that, other than, you know, the kind of vocal stripping and whatever else tech would enable them to approach a wider variety of songs. Of course, yeah, you still have to chart those songs. You still have to, unless you're going to come up with an algorithm that can generate auto charts, which that exists, not necessarily for rock, but, you know, but that exists for stuff like Audio Surf and whatever else. But like that, oftentimes is not going to be as good as a human generated note chart for what you're playing and when. So yeah, I don't know. I think that you really should just get Clone Hero and just break the law. It's probably what you should do. You should probably just get into crime and do it on your PC. Because you know, that's just look, the music industry is not your friend. I think we were well established on that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that there's that. I don't think there's enough interest in it. Also, I might also argue on top of this, like, and I don't know. I'd have to go look, but like, is there enough guitar-based music coming out nowadays to matter? Like, would you do Guitar Hero, or yeah, would you be better served by getting into fucking Sound Voltex or some, you know, just, or, you know, a modern DJ Hero or or whatever else. Like, is there enough? Yeah, is there enough guitar-based music coming out to make a Guitar Hero game popular and viable with the kids? I don't necessarily think so. So, just get a trombone controller and get into the music that the kids love. Yeah. Let's see. Let's scroll back a little bit. Maybe we'll get one more email here. Kyle in Colorado Springs writes in back in April. Your topic about your game collection in your garage and how much space it takes up brought me back to a question I've been pondering for the last couple of years, and that's, should I buy the Steel Battalion controller? Was that game any good, or was it just novel? Was this just a special time in gaming history where they made a ridiculously large controller for one game just for the hell of it? What did you think when you first got to play it? I remember they released a multiplayer-only sequel, but was that only in Japan? And if they said today they were going to make a sequel and release a new controller, would you be excited? Any chance we ever see a company do something like this again? It's a lot of questions, Kyle. Steel Battalion... I did not think it was a very good game. I don't think that game is good. It was cool. The cool thing about the controller was that the eject button had a little plastic cover over it. So you got to flip it up and hit the button like, oh, fuck this. We got to get out of here. And that was pretty much it. But it's just not a great game. It's not like the mission design I remember being really fucking annoying. I remember the act of playing that game felt like aggressively like annoying once you were in it. Once you were past like, oh yeah, we got to do the startup sequence and flip all these switches and start up the mech and do all that stuff. Super fucking cool. But the part where you had to play the video game and the part where they designed, I think, a really underwhelming mission-based mech game is where it just kind of fell apart, And it fell apart to a point where a person who normally tries to hang on to a lot of fucking shit, someone else in the office asked, like, hey, can you bring the Steel Battalion controller back in so I can mess with it? I was like, sure. Get it? Yes, absolutely. I'll bring it in. Like, packed it all up, brought it back in, never saw it again. So I don't have one. I kind of wish I had one, but I don't have one. It's fine. It's just, and yeah, they did do that multiplayer game, which again, I don't think any of the combat or any of that stuff felt good. And that's the big problem with it, is that just a lot of it just felt fucking bad. It just felt like a bad game with an amazing hook. And, I think for a lot of the reasons we just got done talking about with Guitar Hero, it's really hard to see anyone really doing this again because of the retail shelf space, especially as more and more games move to, as digital sales grow and physical sales shrink. You could make there's two arguments you could make there. You could say like, well, hey, if more and more people are going to buy their games digitally, then why would they ever make anything like this ever again? Or you could say, this is exactly the sort of fucking weird thing they should be making if they want to try to get people to go into stores to buy video games and accessories. Like the retailers should be desperately trying to get people to make weird shit that requires you to have a physical thing so that you have a reason to go into stores to buy a game instead of just clicking a button and downloading it, right? But yeah, it's it was a beautiful, strange time. And then, then they did the Kinect only sequel to it, and that sucked in a totally different way. But yeah, I am of the opinion that Steel Battalion is a shitty game. It's amazing. It's notable. It's all of these things. It's great that it exists. It's wild. You know, it's the sort of thing it's fun to fuck with once. If you can find a way to just get yourself like 2 hours with a copy of Steel Battalion and the controller, you should just do that. And then never have to own one yourself. Cause yeah, it's not a great game. But it's great that it existed. I think it whether you should have one or not, I think entirely depends on your values and what you value out of a game. You know, if you're the sort of person who's just like, this is interesting and interesting is better than good, then, that's an interesting thing. But yeah, in terms of lasting value, something you're going to come back to or whatever else, like, this is the sort of thing you pull out once every, I'll tell you, there's maybe been 2 to 3 times since I no longer had a Steel Battalion controller that I've thought, oh, it'd be neat to pull that shit out again. I wish I still had that. But I would just hook it up and fuck with it for 20 minutes and be like, ugh, god damn, I can't believe it. Yeah. So, there you have it. That's going to do it for the emails. Thanks everybody for watching the show. This is episode 61. And yeah, I'll be here later in the week to play some video games. I don't know what even came out. I don't know. I still need to play some more Remnant 2. Seems like people are loving it, which is cool, because I when I played it back in June, I was like, this seems like something that could be really awesome, but I'm not sure just yet. It was nice to know, like, okay, yeah, all right. I saw something in that, but yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is out around the corner here. And I'm interested in trying it. I played a little bit of Baldur's Gate 2. And I think it's cool they're making another one. There's an interesting, like, I don't know if it's a controversy or I don't know if this seems like we were talking about, the rage-based game coverage on YouTube, and maybe this came from there, but I saw it on TikTok. It was people going like, what? Like people like having outrage over a headline where people were saying like, hey, yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 really kind of raises the bar in a lot of ways for, like in terms of the amount of story in a game, blah, blah, like all the other stuff. But basically it was an article saying like, don't take this as like the new way going forward. This is not going to, like, the developers not going to learn lessons from this game that they will then. And people were like, oh, just because developers want to make the shittiest games possible for as cheap as they can. And blah. There was like this weird rage around this really benign headline that was basically saying like, hey, yeah, Baldur's Gate is a big name coming back. They've had a huge advantage in the way that they have developed that game and published that game and put it out, that they have been, selling copies of it all along and doing all, it's been the works for years in a way that just doesn't make business sense for a lot of reasons. And, like Baldur's Gate can get away with doing it because they're doing this, 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 and this. There's a lot of very sensible reasons why Baldur's Gate is the way it is. And also why developers would look at it and go like, this isn't like a normal case for how games are developed. This isn't, you're not going to look at this is not going to be like lessons that every big major game developer can take from this and apply practically to their game. Like, it's just, again, like a very sensible take, I think, to anyone that has been following games for any length of time. You're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But people took that and ran with it and be like, oh, they just want to make the laziest game. It was like, oh, fucking Jesus Christ, people. Get a fucking grip. Real weird. But yeah, it's cool that they're kind of coming to the end of the line on, getting that thing done, whatever, whatever done means these days. And I haven't really looked at Baldur's Gate 3 in a very long time. So I don't know. I'll take a look at it for sure. I just, if I can I, like all games, I approach it and ask myself the question, can I fuck a bear? And so that's going to be my determining factor if Baldur's Gate 3 is a good game or not. I don't know what the answer is, but if you can fuck a bear in that game, it's probably game of the year. So, we'll just have to see. I have been approaching games all year long asking, can I fuck a bear? And the answer is all too often no. And frankly, I'm disgusted. Can I pet the dog? I don't care. Can I fuck the bear? And now game developers, big AAA game devs are saying you shouldn't take this as a sign that you're going to be able to fuck the bear in all these other games. I'm like, you lazy fucks. Let the people get what they want. Let them fuck the bear. Don't put it on your battle pass. Hey, season 4 battle pass. You can pay us $40 if you want to fuck the bear. No. Out of the box bear fucking experience. Period. End of discussion. Last of Us 3, let me fuck a bear. Ghost of Tsushima 2, bear fuck city. Grand Theft Auto 6, the reason why you haven't seen much of it is because they're totally revamping the bear fucking. Because the standards changed. The game has changed. And Rockstar needs to up their game, their bear fucking game. I know. Everyone else is afraid to say it. Not me. We'll be back next week. Maybe we'll fuck some bears. I don't know. Can you stream the bear fucking on Twitch? This seems like something they would be like, no, don't. Absolutely not. I guess I don't know what the bear fucking scene in that game will even look like, but Video games got weird. Anyway, I'm curious to spend a little time with Baldur's Gate 3. It's not normally my kind of thing these days, but I at times over the decades have played games like that almost exclusively. So who knows? There's always one that'll pull me back in, and what better one than one with some hardcore bear fucking? That's all I'm saying. I'm gonna get going. Everybody have a good rest of your Tuesday here. I'll be here on Wednesday to do something with the video games. I don't have anything in front of me. I was like, normally I got something in front of me that I can look at. I go, we'll play this, and this. But I don't know. We'll fucking hang out. We'll figure something out. Maybe I have had an itch to play some old video games lately and just haven't really been able to, there's been a lot of stuff coming out that, maybe we'll knock out some retro achievements. It is our dedicated Exo Primal stream, of course. Anyway, I'm going to get going. I'll push the button here. Yeah. I'll be back later in the week, of course, and we'll reconvene and do some video gaming. And hey, thanks to everybody for the birthday wishes. Yeah, today's my birthday. Thanks for the Twitch subs and the hype chats. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. Sign up for the Patreon. You can hop on the Discord. You'll be over here posting pictures of Peanuts characters dancing. That one guy that does the weird shoulder thing. He's a creep. All that stuff over there. So again, patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. Bonus shows, ad-free podcast, all that other shit. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.